comments on what the whai kōrero. So this is the first of our meetings on a marae. It's as a result of the review and the refresh strategy. One of the things that we agreed is that we would rotate the hui between council buildings and marae. And what I mentioned in my whai kōrero about the importance of having these hui on marae, particularly our marae that are lakeside marae, is it gives us the opportunity to connect directly with the mauri, with the energy of these lakes, with the people that live next to these lakes, with the culture and the historical kōrero alongside these lakes. So from a Arawa perspective, whilst it's a small change to how we run these meetings, it's a big change for us and it's important for us. I just wanted to mention that, and this is part of elevating the role of Arawa in the governance and the management of our lakes. So I want to thank all the members for the review process that we've been through and where we've landed. We're going to talk about that more in the agenda proper, but this is one of the outcomes of that process. So I just wanted to mention that before we get into the meeting proper. Couple of just opening admin comments. The hui will be recorded. We usually live stream it, but we don't have the facilities to live stream today. We do have a little bit of issues in terms of the Zoom. It's possible that they may not be able to hear some of the speakers around the table. They can hear fine from here. So let us know if you need us to clarify anything, those who are online. So just a reminder that the meeting's been recorded and that will be available to the public at a future point. We usually open with a karakia, but in my whai kōrero, I started that with a karakia. So if you're kei te pai, we'll just continue rolling on. The other opening remarks I want to make is just to welcome our new members. I think the councils will be aware that the Arawa Lakes Trust went through an election process late last year. So we've had some changes in terms of our board. In terms of the appointments to the strategy group, we've appointed or reappointed Nikki Nicholson and appointed Nikki Douglas, one of the new trustees, as our primary members on the strategy group. Then we also have Annette Sykes and Karen Verko as the secondary alternates. And then you'll see, or primary alternates, I should say. And then you'll see we've got some secondary alternates. That's Kere on my right, Rangitihi Pene and Tururoa Flavel. And that was just to ensure, because we were quite busy, that we had people that could step in the event that Karen or Annette couldn't step in for the existing members. So also, in terms of Arawa Lakes Trust, I want to congratulate and mihi to Wallace Taumaha, who is our new chairperson, and also Tururoa Flavel, who's the deputy chairperson for Arawa Lakes Trust. And then also our interim CEO, Tina Kilmaster Blue, is here today. Welcome to the strategy group. Environmental matters aren't her expertise, but she's learning really quickly. She's helping us in a whole lot of other areas of the organisation, and you already know the depth of skill we have amongst our Taiao team. Also acknowledge MFE. I don't think MFE are online just yet.
Wes.
Oh, Wes. Oh, ka pai Wes. Cool. So Wes Patrick is online for MFE, so tēnā koe Wes. Otherwise, probably the most important introduction. So one of the other key changes as a result of the review was the appointment of Sueta as the lead champion for the group. So Sueta Dapul, she'll be the champion for our group. So in the past, that's been Helen Cray. So the regional council essentially have facilitated that role. As part of this refresh, Sueta from the Arawa Lakes Trust will now be the lead champion for the group. So welcome, Sueta. Just one other point I want to raise, and again, this might come out in the when we discuss the refresh of the strategy, is one of the key things we talked about was elevating the focus of this group to a more strategic level. To some degree, we've just been monitoring the program as opposed to really thinking longer term, what are the big strategic moves that we need to make. We won't be diving into that now, but as a heads up, there's some work that staff from the various organisations will do to kind of map out our plan over the next 2-3 years. That will include more opportunity for high-level strategic kōrero. A key example of that is we know that the deed funding has a limited in a time frame that it's going to last. Yet we know that the work needs to go on for a lot longer than that. So that's an example of a big strategic issue we need to tackle. I'll leave that there for now. Otherwise, I'll move to apologies. We have received apologies from Phil Thomas from the Lakes Community Board. I did have Councillor White, but he's now online. He told me this morning he was going to have a rest, but he also told me he has no ears, so that's why he's online.
You got it right there, Arapeta. I'll be told my tarangas aren't working.
Yeah, so we're not going to do an apology for you because you don't listen.
And given it's my home marae, I really grieve. I'm sorry I cannot be there. You know, because I'm Ngāti Tataki, that's where I should have been. But Kate Pai, I have to listen sometime.
Also have an apology from Lorena Stevens from MFP.
And Helen Craig.
Helen Craig. Kapai, Regional Council. Are there any other apologies from the floor?
Mia Tapsell will join at 10:30.
Okay, and Mia Tapsell will be joining late at 10:30. Well, not very late, very shortly. Any other apologies from the floor at all?
Can I just ask, Mr. Chairman, Mia Tapsell and Councillor Brown is online.
Oh, Chair.
It's
One member from each organisation.
okay. Fine. Just making sure.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got some apologies. Can I have a mover and a seconder for those apologies, please? White, move Councillor White. And Nikki, all those in favour say aye. Against, carried. We don't have anyone for the public forum today. However, John's just asked if he can give us a bit of a pānui when we get to general business about the AGM for the Lakes Water Quality Society. So we'll pick that up in GB. Yeah. Okay, and there's no items that are not on the agenda. Yes.
Can I have one at the end of the meeting too? It's just about the lakefront development on Lake Rotorua. We just want to have a conversation.
Okay.
So,
we'll pick that up in GB.
Yeah.
Kapai. Any declaration of conflicts of interest in terms of matters on our agenda today? Carl? Okay, we'll move to minutes. I'll take them as read. Are there any changes to the minutes or potential errors at all? Or omissions? Carl? There was just one thought from me. I can't remember what page it was on, but we talked about with the refresh strategy, each partner going back to their respective boards and explaining where it's landed. I just had the thought, and happy for this to sit with staff to work out the best way to do it, but I just thought in terms of consistency of the messaging, that maybe it be a bit of a team presentation as opposed to just Lakes Council talk to themselves, having someone like Soweto as the champion at each of those presentations, just to keep the consistency of the messaging and also to show a united front. So it might be that there's a staff member from each organisation presenting to each of those councils. So that's just a thought I wanted to put out there. Great to point. We'll leave that with staff to think through. Okay, so there's no changes. I've got a mover for the minutes. Can I have a seconder from somebody? Kapai Nuki has seconded. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carried.
It's been cancelled.
Was that for us? That's been Kapai. Okay, we are going to move on to item 8. Or 8.1, sorry. So the appointment of new representatives for the Arawa Lakes Trust. Move. Kapai. Kapai. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. I essentially kind of mentioned this in my opening comments about the new members. This is just a formality of accepting the new members of the Arawa Lakes Trust. So that's all done. 8.2, adoption of the refreshed vision and strategy. So you'll recall that we received the refresh strategy at our last meeting, but we didn't formally adopt it. There was a lot of support for it. So essentially we're in the process of formally adopting it. But I'm going to pass over to Soweto.
Yeah, and if you can just check the presentation.
Your presentation.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, item 8.2 is essentially putting a recommendation forward to the strategy group to adopt the refreshed vision and strategy 2025 to 2050. But before that, I thought I'd just give a quick update onto how we got to the refreshed vision and strategy. So, you know, particularly for those that are new here. So 2023, you'll know that we underwent a independent review of the strategy group, led by La Ngātika, with support from Alva Panoi and Ikutima. Yeah. And coming out of that review, it was found, you know, a number of recommendations, but particularly that the overall findings of the review found that it doesn't, of the strategy group and the lakes program, does not restore the mana and rangatiratanga of Te Arawa. It doesn't establish a meaningful relationship between Crown and Te Arawa, and it doesn't ensure that relationship with the Crown comprises mutual trust and cooperation. So that was the overall takeaway from the review. There was 2 pathways put forward to the strategy group based off those findings and the recommendations. And pathway 1 was either to disestablish the strategy group altogether, or pathway 2 to overhaul the strategy group and the lakes program. We workshopped the independent review as partners. We found that there were enough strengths amongst our partnership to not fully disestablish the strategy group, but instead take pathway 2, which is the overhaul. So as part of the overhaul, there was 8 recommendations. Particularly last year, we were focused on recommendations 1, 2, and 3, and that was done through a series of workshops. So the recommendation 2, and this is where we're asking you to adopt the vision and strategy, was to carry out a refresh of that vision and strategy and embed Te Tuapapa o ngā wai o Te Arawa into the new strategy, with those new emerging issues that were also identified in the interviews. So I think it's key to realise that recommendations 1, 2, and 3 are sort of overlapped. Some of the other findings that we found from the review was that the vision and strategy document wasn't underpinning how we were working together in terms of how we were planning and reporting. So when it came to coming to the strategy group, you know, councils were reporting against largely the defunded activities, and Te Arawa Lakes Trust were sort of putting our hand up and saying, you know, we've done this and we've done this. But largely it was not in line with the strategic outcomes of that vision and strategy. So in a way to elevate the voice of Te Arawa and the role that we play in the strategy group, we thought it was important to take goal 4 of the old vision and strategy, so that we weren't siloed to just one goal, and instead lift Te Tuapapa into the entire strategy. So previously we had the vision, it's unchanged, it's in the deed of settlement. We've got the old vision and strategy. Out of goal 4 comes the lakes catchment that's managed through Te Arawa values, and then we have the development of Te Tuapapa o ngā wai o Te Arawa. Our team works to Te Tuapapa. Our proposals, how we work with our research partners, everything we do is underlined by Te Tuapapa. But what we want to do is have the entire lakes program aligned to cultural values, so that all the lakes are managed along with Te Tuapapa. So that was what was workshopped last year through a series of workshops with Alva, and we end up elevating Te Tuapapa into the vision and strategy, and this is what you have before you now on the table. A key part of that was looking at whakapapa o te wai, which is our guiding values from Te Tuapapa, and looking at our strategic priorities going forward. So you'll see within the vision and strategy document what those strategic priorities are. And it in a sense is a deconstructive view of the vision. We've talked about protecting and preserving the lakes and the catchments, the long-term ecological health and well-being of the lakes, that being wai order. We talked about ensuring our traditional relationship with our lakes is upheld, that our connection to them is enduring, and that came through in Wairua, which is a cultural connection and legacy. And then Waiata was focused around engaging with our communities, bringing our skills along the journey, getting everyone connected to their lakes, and ensuring that that use and enjoyment, and also that sense of responsibility to look after the lakes was embedded within. And that's a comprehensive list of some of the priority actions that came out in terms of the outcomes and how we might develop an implementation plan. It's not fully comprehensive, so the plan in terms of the next steps is to go through the rest of the recommendations, wānanga together, And then widening it outwards as well in terms of developing that implementation plan that aligns with the refresh vision strategy. But first, we do need to get it adopted officially by the strategy group.
Any questions at all? Comments? Nikki?
Not a question, it's definitely a comment. So, I was just saying, I'm very excited to be here today. My first time in this forum as a government member and staff member. I just want to express my congratulations and thanks to the former members of the strategy group for taking on the wheel of giving a strategic focus around the way that children play their role in the restoration of these lands. So congratulations. I also want to commend the staff for the hard work they've done over the last couple of years bringing this to fruition. I know moving between what your governments need and what you practically need to do can be difficult. So I just want to really acknowledge the work that you guys have done to us today. I think focus of the strategy has been on making the quality, most of it being geared to that. And while it's making sure that the TLI, we're 2 auditors now, which might be within the acceptable range, we're not seeing people take high from that lake, and we're still not seeing people swimming in that lake and enjoying it in the way that our ancestors once did. So I'm really excited that we're lifting our view on local quality and thinking about the other outcomes that we want to see living there in these lakes under those the guidance of both the way and way us and women. So we just really want to commend with them today and excited about what we move forward to. And just strategically thinking about what we need to do to move beyond the program we have and what the strategy looks like.
Any other comments? Councillor Victor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and really pleased with the new strategy document, Mr. Hayden. I think it sums up our journey to get to here today. There's one bit that sort of put the hairs on the back of my neck up, and it's on number 8, the measure of our success. Community connector. Well, it's halfway through the document, Mr. Chairman. And it's a comment here under the community connector. People of all ages will feel safe and secure enjoying the lakes in harmony with nature. And whilst I share the sentiment of that, if I take this hat off and I put on my Rotorua Lakes Coast Guard hat, our lakes are not safe for our tamariki and our people. I've pulled too many bodies out of the waters in my time on Rotorua Lakes Coast Guard, and I've had too many near misses of people taking our lakes for granted and thinking they're safe. I'm just wondering if we can wordsmith that better. And I'm not a grammatical expert, but I'm just wondering if we can wordsmith it better to say our lakes are a treasure and not to be taken for granted. Something like that, because they're not safe, Mr. Chairman.
Is it that the lakes aren't safe or people aren't safe?
Well,
Just clarify.
people drown. People drown.
Okay, point taken.
And I'm happy for Soweto to use it better.
Yeah, I mean, if it's potentially minor,
It's a minor.
we could take it as being adopted and.
Yeah.
With it, yeah.
Yep. One of the things that brings to mind for me to Councillor Winters is the other parties that have some role in the lake. So safety as an example.
Oh, our maritime.
Exactly.
Have a big role.
Sure.
Yeah.
So just the importance of how we connect.
Yeah. Policing our bylaws, our navigation and safety bylaws.
Sure.
And that's a big work commitment for us every weekend to police our bylaws through our maritime division, like Coast Guard, search and rescue. Yeah.
I mean, I think there's other elements that are around cultural safety as well, you know, but it's whether we want to just change that word or together and talk about connection rather than safety and security.
Yeah.
Through Chair, I just also think it's the 2050 vision. So I think there's agree that at the moment there's probably a lack of awareness, understanding, and maybe something about communicating better, so we can get to by 2050 To produce this, people in all ages feel safe. So just thinking that this is the aspirational goal and what will we stay? You want to maintain that as an aspiration. Yeah, so just thinking about that 25 years.
I think that's a fair comment, Nikki. In light of that, Kevin, are you happy that we just leave it as is because it's an aspiration as opposed to saying it is how it is now?
Under why answer.
Yeah, but I'm just raising it in this forum that I'm uncomfortable having the word safe in there because I know what happens.
Noted. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah.
One of those. So there's, we have Kevin Morley.
Yes.
Statements. Coast Guard say, sometimes they're taken in the context of environment and the environmental say. It's so, the definition of safe.
Yeah, it's just wordsmithing, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, to
I think either way, whether you talk culturally, environmentally, you know, from that perspective, it is definitely aspirational. These are the measures of success.
Something like, I want to get this across today, but
yeah, we can adopt it, but it's just a minor there with.
Yeah.
Okay.
To adopt it with some minor wordsmithing.
Just note.
Because there may be other little bits and pieces that get picked up.
In
Yeah.
always on page, we can just have a number 3 recommendation that we allow Soweto to do any minor editing.
And get carried away though.
Well, whenever we adopt strategies and policies through regional council, we always have that number 3 that we
Yeah,
allow
with a
staff
minor
to do some
amendments.
minor editing changes.
Oh, yeah.
Just so that if it's not word perfect, you can do that.
Got a question or comment from Toru?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I really like the document, but there's one point in there that says elevate the status of Te Arawa Lakes Trust. In this, I've always considered Te Arawa Lakes Trust to be a really important third leg to the stool, really important. So, how are you looking at elevating the status of Te Arawa Lakes Trust in this, Peter, if there's concerns?
Right, I'll let Soweto answer firstly.
Yeah, so through the workshops that we've done, you know, and there was quite a few of them with Alva, who was quite critical and also developing Te Tuapapa, you know, that was key to that recommendation is that we elevate Te Tuapapa into the vision and strategy. So that is how we elevate Te Arawa into this as a whole. Whether or not that comes across as obvious to you, I'm not sure. But I think, you know, part of it is that this is just part of how we elevate our status and role. You know, we're going to have to look at those other recommendations in terms of future funding and that funding sitting where it needs to sit. We're going to have to look at how we elevate our status and role as we develop the implementation plan and as we refresh the MOU with our partners. So there's multiple things in terms of how we still need to meet that recommendation. It's the vision and strategy.
Thank you. Got it.
You know, if I just add to that, I think this is just one part of this refresh process. So we've landed the strategy doc, but then there's layers beneath that. Yeah. So how do we change operationally? How do we change the way we have our governance meetings and so forth? So you will see some changes flow through over the next wee while. I expect that we're probably going to need a few workshops as we go along because there will be some changes as we go, or there will be strategic issues that we need to deal with. So the staff are going to work together to kind of map out what does the plan look like for the next 2 to 3 years, so we can lift it to a more strategic level.
So taking the recommendation, Peter, taking the recommendation off the paper into action is where we're heading, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Kia ora.
So, they have big and big links around the Hapua anyway. So while it talks about the goal of this group, actually it's for Hapua areas for future generation, future doing this work. So yeah.
Right. Okay. If there aren't any further questions or comments, I'll turn our attention to the recommendations. So firstly, that we receive the report. Secondly, that we adopt the vision and strategy. And then a third one, have you got the wording, something
Just
about?
supporting with doing minor editing.
Okay,
Yeah.
goodbye.
Happy to
So we're
move.
supporting staff to make minor edits.
Do I need to bring, I mean, it will be adopted, but do I need to bring that back for the next strategy group to?
I don't
The
think
minor
minor
edits
edits
out
necessarily.
next.
We can get a copy for our information, but I don't think it's about us adopting
Yeah.
the minor edits. Okay, so we've got a mover, councillor White, can I have a seconder? Oh, sorry, councillor Winters, Arawa mai. Seconder, councillor Brown. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Goodbye. Okay, we'll move on to item 8.3. So this is a presentation about Te Ora o Tarawera. We've got Nicola and Sarah who will present this kōrero. Hea kōrero. Hara mai. Oh, Nicole, sorry.
Year or so, and I'm in other space. I just like quickly go on the budget. So the budget for the collective impact project is about getting more long-term collective action. Like some of the investment. Some of the seminars, and meetings, and the government activity groups. These are our project outcomes that are annual, so including collective action, building up the capacity and ability of that and coordinating cohesive project that can be sustainable. So I'm just going to brush on what we've been working on the past 2 years on this project. So we had a lot of the engagement last 2 years. Our first big one in late 2023, we hosted it at Arawa. We catered to our new partners, those who have needs, and planning cities. And it's all about reconnecting firstly with each other and then our why. So we don't have a relationship to our motives, what was first taking or actually engaged. So I think that's really the first step out of the issue for our why. It was all about building our capacity and capability at EVs. So we had another July workshop. We're stoked to have like 55 in the room, which is a hard sell for a policy workshop. We had an EDM workshop, so Australia had one in the monitoring space. We took our fundamental space over there. A lot of them was the first time, on the other side of the lakes, we could have access to boats. We had non-Spanish and student corridor. We also had a site visit at like all colors, so we learned about collective action on behalf of them. On projects that we're working on with other stakeholders like council and researchers. So lots of learning for us, lots of learning around farming workshops and aspirations and what we're finding in long-term lakes. The workshop we had on there and on engagements over the last 2 years, it was clear again that we wanted to our own monitoring as well. So we were the project, we worked with the community as the analysts and do our own monitoring. So now Monday to security and expect them to get some like monitor. Their legs and the gold pen popped up and legs by security list. We also extended their voluntary training course. We trained up in biosecurity officers to the Biosecurity Act. We're also training up our youth to become scientific divers so we can do that monitoring. I'm not the ones that are training up as a scientific diver too. So the research collaborations, we've been supporting a number of research projects that will help you with decision making in the future and involve you directly with the monitoring as well. The last we've got the set who's spoken with refugees for Koala population over in Rotorua. We've got working on a case study of the Tarawera lake system executive focused around 200 years usage of lakes and river as a minor pie, especially around the Kakaki. So we supported him for delivering money in car workshops for our partners as well. And then also got a new PhD student in Vienna on Q65. So the aspirations that we've our partner was supported in scholarship to more of this research to be done for the benefit of Alex and by our other people as well. We have a one and the next level for China. Our partners, it's about the relationships and the capacity and capability of our EV, especially in the freshwater management and policy space. We workshop the aspirations, the values, issues, connections that exist within the time attachment of the national objectives framework. We also look at what collective impact is look like together within some of the rates. And for a part of the plan, I think it's the workshop as well, where the community more moving there, it's from Arawa and it's with Mila. So we've been also collaborating on a number of research projects across our lakes. The top left was over Rotorua, where we had surrounding university, 97 researchers council come out and do the work of installing these artificial reefs for our coast. So when the impacts of climate change, the possibility to visit our coast. We had Mahina Kai service on the bottom right of that survey for Gala Congress better understand the relationship between our lakes and as a Mahina Kai source. So through that we can make decisions on the management of our lakes. We have over 200 responses from that, so the result of that would be answered as well. And we also had a research project around trout stocking and lake aquifers. They wanted the project to gradually decrease the amount of trout in that lake and how to protect our fossil species. So this allows EV to make decisions around what to do and not to do right. So just encourage EV to make their own decisions based on these research projects. Last year, and again just the other week, we collaborated with Rotorua dive, our local dive shop, to build the Kurutai and Ruku dive workshop. So this was all about certificating and in our case, species in our lakes, and common species in our water plants. Rotorua dive, we also do a lot of the training that our EVs to become scientific divers in order to conduct the monitoring of our lakes themselves. So part of it was around diversity lesson around other species, taking the prize so they can see what we do as scientific divers in terms of monitoring the lakes, and they get to learn about monitoring and practices themselves. So here we have another one this time in lots of tasks. We started with another Arawa and others level relativity. So demonstrating a connection between the work we do in our lakes upstream and how it impacts our farming downstream. So the Q's and Q5 approach, we mountains for the sea. We also have another policy-based workshop looking at more of the national objectives framework and see what system change would look like for the climate action. So all of this kind of audio that we collected over the as well, was translated and there's a draft document about regulation school from Arawa. High approach, so recognizing that it needs to get the crystal on what the numbers do. So that was thinking about some of the attachment and the national affairs framework we also highlighted value values, including common species, lots of other complexities in life and energy. Is there to talk about the military? Other?
Te Reo or Ngāti Karu Rotorua, Ngāti Rangi me Ngāti Whare. So I've been part of the sort of Tāmaki project for about 2 years now. I got to be fantastic at handling all of our community stuff. I do fish stuff. Easy distinction. So part of what really came out really quickly out of a lot of the workshops held and a lot of the one held was that through our monitoring and through the tools that we utilise to connect with our lakes, our cultural narratives need to be embedded into that entire process from start to finish. So not just in individual little pockets where we can talk about Māori or we can talk about sites of significance, but throughout every single point through the process. So monitoring and modelling tools, the importance of rooting our monitoring regimes within the Te Ao Māori worldview was really clearly identified, and those monitoring tools must be developed with the intention of supporting our cultural narratives and facilitating understanding from our athletes. So just like Chris was saying earlier about being at this site today, about making sure that we are actually physically present with our lakes that we are speaking about, that we are trying to help and update, we need all of those points to actually be embedded in our monitoring in the way that we move around our lakes. And in order to do that, there needs to be humans there on the lakes, ideally humans who come to that lake. So without that, a lot of the story of our lakes becomes lost, and a lot of the interconnection with our lakes becomes lost. Without that relationship, there's no reason for people to care about what is up with that. So when we talk about the waiata and waiata frame, waiata up the top is paramount and principle in making sure that those lakes are still there and still useful. But without waiata and waiata, no one cares about using the lakes, no one cares about doing it. So we're trying to very heavily embed those two values in the way that we monitor and in the way that we understand our lakes. And through that process, we came up with the Te Kupe and Nui framework, which was developed through one of the series to be able to support our parties in gathering meaningful data. So there's a lot of data being gathered already. All of that is really helpful for a lot of other programs going on in our lakes. However, it wasn't necessarily servicing our local and our people and our communities, wider communities as well. When we look across our communities, many of them don't have a succinct and well-rounded understanding of our lakes, and part of that is because they are missing out on a lot of the story. They don't understand the story of the aquatic weeds and how they came here. They don't understand the story of what our plant species populations used to look like prior to the introduction of trout. A lot of people don't have that narrative embedded in their understanding of the lakes, and because of that, they can't necessarily understand why should we put this effort in, why should we put these researchers in here. The Te Kupe and Nui framework seeks to gather together data through sensory observations and traditional methods that connect us to the lakes and reflect the really special relationship that we have to the lakes. Not just as together, but actually in our entire communities. When people have that really strong connected feeling to the lake, they are more likely to actually get out there and do something about it. They are more likely to follow through with the recommendations that we make to them, to everyday people on the ground. They are more likely to be safe out there on our lakes, to respect that our lakes are potentially a dangerous place for you or not. And that mindset, and they are more likely to actually keep themselves safe through that connection. That framework would be able to conduct a whole lot of different monitoring to actually fill some of the gaps that our beauty partners are experiencing. Part of that has been through our opportunity under there, which is our cultural monitoring, and lots of that is based around our common species and around introducing those onward to our community, making sure that our communities understand what is actually out there and what we are trying to protect. For a lot of people and a lot of the community that have attended our workshops, our wānanga, and our other dailies that we do out on our lakes, a lot of those community have no idea what COVID is, most adults don't know what koala is, and many of them would never have seen them for themselves. I'm the kind of person who grew up on the lakes, and I really want to make sure that kids have the exact same experience I did, because when they get that, they turn into being just so a lot of these photos are from our workshops, some from our wānanga, and are from enabling or points where we've been able to enable our whānau to connect with those whānau, to be able to touch them, to feel them, to understand them, and to see them as a cousin, essentially, as a member of our whānau, as part of our whānau. you know, so another one of the gaps that has been identified is that, when we address mobility monitoring through a very narrow perspective, it kind of just becomes habitat monitoring, or water quality monitoring, or a combination of a few other different factors. What was missing there was the emotional connection to our lakes and to the mobility of our lakes, particularly when we're talking a lot about Tarawera throughout this project. Tarawera is a lake that has felt a lot of trauma, it's felt a lot of pain, and it's felt a lot of hurt. And when we skip over that part of the story, we don't include that cultural narrative in the way that we interact with that lake, we end up putting ourselves in dangerous situations. We end up putting ourselves in spiritually difficult and culturally difficult situations. And a lot of that information wasn't being captured through the methods that we are using currently. So we developed a whole new mobility survey, which encompasses a lot of those values. It's a lot based in the social science and the relationship between ourselves and our lakes that we are personally experiencing, and in our sensory observation, right? So 200 years ago, we didn't have cyanobacteria testing, we didn't have E. coli testing, we went to the lake, we looked. And that was a relatively good way to actually monitor our lakes at that point in time, and I'm trying to ensure that those skills are actually practiced today throughout our people. So that people can go and feel confident in saying, because they have the skills to be able to understand our lakes better, to be able to go somewhere and say, today's not a good day to swim, or maybe we should make sure to take a life jacket. All of those little factors come down to having a really strong relationship with the lakes. We have Rotorua, so we set up Rotorua at a few of the lakes within the Tarawera system and it's outside the Tarawera system to be able to actually connect our farms with this farm. So there is Rotorua monitoring obviously going on right now. That's great. However, it's done through a very scientific lens at this point, and our farmer don't have access to the raw data coming out of that project, and we don't have access to the raw data coming out of that project. So because we can't access that data, and we can't make our own conclusions, we've started up a complementary program to be able to actually take my photo and ensure that the martoma around Rotorua, not just the scientific aspect of monitoring, but the aspect of taking fire, the aspects of when is this a sustainable point to take fire, how many photos do we need on each fucking vehicle, what are the names for every single point along that code, what are some of the karakia that we can use, what are some of the atua that we are interacting with. All of those pieces of martoma around Rotorua are being passed on to our farm. And the best way to do that is in our schools. So we've got our kids on the left and right there. We started this program just about a week ago. We just started taking the kids out. We've got a 10-week program that we're running out throughout the term of these kids, make sure that they get the full spectrum of Tokona knowledge. It's also been amazing to be able to get our farm out on the lakes. As a volunteer earlier, most, if not all of our farmers, the people who attend these kind of events with us, have not been able to vote on their own lake. The difference for our people in being able to go out and vote on their own lake is absolutely immense, particularly when we're talking about China, when we're talking about Tarawera, those forested catchments. When you get out on that lake and you get away from the residentials and away from where you can see all the housing and you round the corner into a bay and it is essentially exactly what our Tokona would have seen 200 years ago when they were paddling water across that lake, that's a very special feeling for us. It's a huge connector to your own whakapapa, to your own ancestors, and all the way back to that lake. So that's been hugely important for our whānau, and it's been really impactful for people. And it's something that we can pretty easily facilitate. It's not difficult. It doesn't take a massive tranche of funding. It doesn't even take anything off of our part. It's relatively easy to give these experiences, and we just need to offer more and more and more. Because accessibility for our whānau at this point in time is almost non-existent. So this is a project that we've developed fairly recently, and be able to again fill some of those gaps in the data that our whānau have been finding. So there is at the moment, using wise. Apart from the route programs that we have been running, there is the topo monitoring, and then there's not a lot of information outside of that on our policies. So, a question came to us maybe a couple of months ago around how are our eel populations, and no one really had any long-term data across. It's been a really big gap, and especially when we think about our connection to the lakes here, we need to know where those species are and where those populations are for market purposes. So in order for us to be able to provide their honeycomb, be able to provide for our own when they come, we can't do that without actually having solid and current data on where our species are and where in the state to take from. Otherwise, we don't move on. We could find some quota, but we don't know whether or not those are the last quota or like they could might be. When we look at places like Fiji, where we've got this huge catfish issue, and the catfish have forced the quota population in decline, it becomes really, really difficult to be able to trust that you can take that line in the first place without feeling empirical in it. So what we all apply with this was a project where we went around and systematically mapped babies within the lake. All of these babies we picked out because of their suitability towards quota and towards marking a lake. And we mapped out within those babies whether or not there was a quota population there, and if there was, what is the structure of this population? Are there massive adults that are ready for marking a lake right now, or are there a small population of juveniles that we need to then upbeat, that we need to then manage and grow their population? Those reports can be provided to our Emily and our one-on-one to be able to provide them with enough information to actually decide how are we going to manage our population. Where are we going to attribute resources? When do we need to find resources in the first place to support our science population? Sharing. So obviously, there's a lot of data being out there being collected at the moment. There's a lot of data that's sitting in a lot of different spaces across all of our different stakeholders. But at the moment, a lot of that data isn't really coming together in a way that supports our hub and our iwi, or our communities at large to be able to make solid decisions in the way that the others interact with our lakes. So the data regarding the health and well-being of the Taranaki Lake system at the moment is kind of still in silos across multiple different states. Different stakeholders have made some of the data publicly available, but a lot of it is still private. We have some really awesome platforms out there, the OMC tool, all these great things, but at the end of the day, some of the most important pieces of that data, things like our numbers of poker, aren't actually being provided and presented to the public in that same. So it leaves us with big gaps and with knowledge that we can access and knowledge that people can point to, but knowledge that isn't necessarily meaningful in the context that we are looking at our from. Because we have identified this lack of sort of meaningful data and these issues in the way that our data is being presented, in order to truly understand the state of the lakes within the Taranaki Lake system, the data must be gathered and communicated in such a way that reflects the relationship between iwi and lakes. So making sure that the data that comes out of our projects, when we are presenting it, when we are showing others, we are giving people the full story of that data, of the cultural significance of that data, of the future significance of that data, of what this means not just for ourselves right now, but what this means for our children, where we are trending towards, what would the original state have been 200 years ago. All of these points are really important for being able to tell the full story of our lakes. And I understand it's really difficult, but I don't take the answer here. We haven't been able to come up with a tool that presents every single one of these points in a succinct and precise and also aesthetically pleasing and easy to access way. There's a lot of points there that we're trying to hit. But without consideration for those points and consideration for being able to provide data like this, we will never be able to reach our theories. We won't be able to get people's care, and at the end of the day, we end up putting a lot of resource into something that is only serving a few people. And so, in future, we're looking towards being able to actually present our cultural narratives and our data in different ways and tell the story of our lakes. Whether or not that be through online dashboards and websites or one tool, but actually being able to have our human influence and our human connection to the lakes embedded in that whatever. So having our people speak to their relationship with the lakes and speak to the data and what that means to them, rather than having a graph do that work for us and allowing people to draw their own conclusions, because oftentimes those conclusions end up being misinterpreted. We also have our silver funded dashboard. So while we were able to come up with a recursive system that did absolutely everything, we were able to come up with something. The Rotorua Whakauru dashboard has been provided to our partners, and that's in order to be able to provide timely information about what at least the other lakefront is. And about our communities as well, and the people that we have been able to interact. So we've had a really great response from a lot of our community projects around Lake Taupena. And what we've been able to do there is provide that information straight back to our early partners so that when they have people who want to volunteer or people who want to gamify our experience, we can point them in the right direction and get a tool to do that. It also contains a lot of the information around things that just pieces of the data that we hold at this very moment, the aquatic spray program, all of the cultural monitoring that is going on. But at the end of the day, rather than having 15 different dashboards across every stakeholder website to display small pieces of data, it definitely feels like there's a better way to do this. And in a group like this, it's probably the place to do it, where all of those different stakeholders and dashboard holders are actually at the same time and maybe look to the future and how we can present a united front and how we can be about lakes and our
Yeah. So our next step, so funding for this project is actually wrapping up. It wrapped up last month, but the work continues. So we're working on the MOUs with our partners. And other than that, all of our projects holidays can continue. Setting up that MOU. And also on a schedule that we've done a system change workshop with the strategy group. So without wider amount of funding, so they're going to help us deliver these workshops and what systems that change and platform some of the next system so that a more structural change, operational change and transforming change.
Kia ora. Yeah, thank you. Tēnei ka mihi ake kia kōrua, ka rongo au I te aroha, tō kōrua aroha mō ngā roto moana tēnei ka mihi. So I just mentioned there, you can really feel the passion and the love they have for our lakes and the work they do. Thank you very much. I'll open it up for any questions or comments on this presentation. Oh, while others are thinking, I do have a couple. Sorry, Taru, kai a koe?
Yeah, ngā mihi kia koutou mō koutou whakaaro pai, whakaaro pai ki a mātou I tēnā. I really enjoyed your presentation. I think it's on point and a lot of things in there that we need to recognise in a way moving forward for our lakes, for estuaries, for our environmental issues, full stop. I think the fact that you've got an iwi-led program going as well, I think is quite critical here, because what I perceive that the problem, you mentioned collective impact, Mr. Chair, and that's really, really important. But collective impact is, to me, is always got to be towards a common cause, and it's always quite difficult to find because of the politics and the personal issues that people present into that particular space. So I want to applaud you for really focusing on that as well, because without that we've got a problem. But you know, I like that there's so much information going on, from nothing wrong with the lakes to to everything is wrong with it. You know, and hearing your presentation and the information, sometimes when that information daylighted to give it presence in the current political environment, I think is really, really important because it's hidden at the moment. You know, it's hidden and we need to daylight it. That's as simple as that, because there's so many damn problems happening because people are fishing in information off the top. Really, really, really bad news, really, in my view. So I want to congratulate you about that. And the fact that you're looking at revival triangle, the triangle that you had there and the things that you want to step through, get action going, get it going. But it is, to me, the key here is to get that collective impact going. But with that, but there needs to be a sharing in that space of information so we're clear. I love your information. I think it's great. I really think, Mr. Chair, that at some point, report back on how that research is going. And its finding to Channel Lake Strategy Group would be valuable, you know, because yeah, like I say, so many damn distractions out there, Mr. Chair. And yeah, and the fact that the common interest here is protecting and restoring, to put it simply, the motility of the lake and so the health and well-being. To me, that's the common interest. I would find it hard to think that you could actually not agree with that. So getting that agreement to it and having substantiated by the research that you're doing, even though we feel culturally it's the right way, but we've got to be able to expanded to other parts of the community as well, in that context of getting a collective action impact going. So just a comment to you, just congratulations. I loved it. I think it's refreshing. It's what this particular group needed to hear, does need to hear. Apply to Tarawera, apply to every other damn lake we've got here. It's transformative if we can pick it up and go with it. Kia ora. Nami.
Kia ora, Councillor White. Nikki.
Thank you for your wisdom. I have been involved in this program in the past, so really great to see it presented here today. A couple of things I've got, so one of the pillars of this previous strategy and the vision of this group was to drive change in our Rotorua through regulatory and policy change. And what we've seen through that policy change, mainly campaign change is land use change. So, and the hope that in 60 to 80 years we would have a shift in Lake Rotorua intention. We don't have the same regulatory settings for the Lake system, where you can have an opportunity and the refresh of the regional plan again. So just a question around how this work will link into the work that is currently being done in the regional council around policy for the 8 months.
What's on that? It's a challenge, to be honest. Like, we came in with change of governments, and with that, and of course, is also changes. So we're not forcing as well as talk about point it and to kind of guide us through that. So we think continue on this further portfolio to kind of figure out how that can be possible. But yeah, we're kind of collecting, you know, as much information as we can about it in terms of what it is as well.
I think that's probably the thing as well, is that through all the one and the workshops, we did a really thorough job of capturing all of the colonial paper of those workshops, and it's given us a really strong basis for whatever comes next in freshwater policy, be that the pendulum has sort of swung to a different direction at the moment. I mean, something that we didn't expect it to go, but once it's swinging on back, we're going to be ready to go. So, yeah.
And then my other point was just around, you talked about the data yet. What would change for you if more of that data was available? And then also what, how are you thinking about those? So just, yeah.
When it comes to the data and what would change for us if we get access, at the moment we are almost going into the slide. We're not in that we know our lakes, we have all of our observational data and all of our understandings from being out on the lake today. But apart from that, we aren't getting a huge amount of understanding and meaning out of the data that's currently being provided. A lot of it is in the way that it's not necessarily the data itself being handled, but it's the way that those programs are being structured. So when I think about the Sustainable Experience Program, for example, the Sustainable Experience Program services 17 sites. Most of those are on Rotorua, some of them are on Rotorua. This year we had down blue on Tarawera. That was something that obviously the program was not set up to service whatsoever. It didn't catch it out of the blue. I saw it, I checked the out there, I took lots of photos, got species, etc. But it was about 3 to 4 weeks later that the Bombassi team actually got out there to check it out and take sample. And part of that whole process could have gone so much smoother had we been sampling there in the first place, or had we been logging observations and talking to each other about what was going on. Yeah. So there are information that pretty well, but in order to be able to utilize it correctly, to actually get the gains out of it that we want to get, we need to be able to share and be open with each other. That's where the data sovereignty thing comes in quite heavily and becomes a bit of an obstacle in a lot of ways, especially when I can understand that we are quite secure with our data in terms of we are accountable to our iwi, and our iwi are very concerned about data sovereignty and giving away our home to others. But at the same time, I can recognise that we are expecting a huge amount of trust from our stakeholders in being able to access their data, and so we actually have to come to the table as well to be able to provide that. There are, I think, levels and ways of doing data that are suitable for everybody. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. We can find a really happy middle ground where we are maybe sharing estimates instead of exact numbers, or we are sharing general areas instead of pinpointing sites. Little tweaks like that in the way that we present our data can make all the difference in making sure that our farmers feel safe and still feel that they can trust us in holding their data and trust us in holding this kind of control over the data makes, but we are still being able to share and benefit through those.
I was thinking about, just in order to report on the strategy and the way that it's framed, that data sharing moved into the will need to be resolved over time, but just encourage you to continue this.
I might just pick up off the back of Nikki's corridor. I agree that this data space is really important, and how we share, how it adds value to the individual organisations and us as a collective and the work that we're doing. I just want to make it a note as a strategically important one of the puzzle of many things we'll need to deal with. So we don't know if you can capture that, because ideally we should be able to share this information really easily across our organisations in a way that adds value. And I know this has been a bit of a barrier for a while. Despite all the organisations doing some really good work, I think regional councils has some really awesome information available. One of the tricky things for us as iwi is that we can't pull that into our system so we can then overlay our own information. We just have to look at it over there. So it's hard for us to correlate information with other data sets we have. I'll leave that there. I think that's a start. We can pick that up.
Yeah, I would just make a comment. I mean, we have approached Andy and Helen about, particularly around the coded data, and what, I haven't had any barriers from them, so I just want to acknowledge that. But there is some barriers with the contractors, so I think that's something we need to work through in terms of where does that data sit and who does it belong to. Yeah, so we are definitely approaching it. In progress.
Yeah. Looking.
To the chair, congratulations, ladies, so proud of the presentation. And all those words really, music, political collaboration. It's exactly why we're here. And I just endorse what everyone else has said in the issue around the data. And I was going to raise how this can support you to remove those barriers or even lead you through the council. Those opportunities, it would be good to hear that if we can do something, but yeah, again, just love the commission.
I think we can get something that's about making this data a strategic colour rather than, because at the moment one of the problems that we are facing is that it is contract by contract. We are seeking this data, and so we are having to approach every single different manager, every different contractor, and start at the bottom and work our way up, whereas what we need to do is actually have a top-down directive of this is what happens down, this is how we move it here. That would be ideal.
Okay. Any other questions?
I just would comment that, look at slide, the triangle, the idea that particularly about the strategy is our kind of colour and our vision, and now we build the system around it, and the data and the key colour of that strategy is also the key colour of the system working well. So, it's one of the transformative aspects of collective impact is data sharing and understanding. So, yeah.
I did have one other question, sorry, and it is kind of data related. You mentioned in your corridor that many of our people don't know what the populations look like in the past in terms of taonga species and whatnot. I think that's a very fair comment. Out of interest, through the Fish Futures work that is modelling current ecological stuff, are they able at all to have a crack at modelling what past populations look like? Because I'm just thinking our TLI, our metric is based on a TLI in the idea that was the TLI in 1960, but that's just one measure. If I could know the abundance of koalo, coda, if there's a way of reverse modelling that might be a useful bit of information to provide baselines for where we want to get to in the future, back to the future. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we're adopting Simon as well. What we can leave them on.
Quite.
Oh, sorry.
No, you go first and then
I just wanted to make a comment, before it heads into the next item, you know, because we're gonna start hearing things about the funded lakes and priority lakes. And, you know, there's a reason why this item came before the next. Because particularly the strategy group here, the role is to ensure the settlement aspirations for all our lakes are met. And particularly what we found in the review, which is problematic, is deeming priority lakes. You know, I dare you to go talk to some of our iwi and say your lake's not a priority, or even communities. And so this project in particular was put forward to a that system that didn't really, you know, wasn't really getting that funding put in, and it was a program that was being able to lead out by iwi. And you can see the broader outcomes across it. So it gives you a hint to where we can head in terms of the lakes program. But also when we're talking about adding lakes into the deed funding, looking at future funding, considering all those wider outcomes as well. So I just wanted to mention that before. Yeah, but also
Fine. Te Taru, you got another comment?
Yes, Arawa, Mike. Yeah, I noticed we got Wes Patrick online from the MFE, and so nice to see you, Wes, because the MFE being, and I want to put this in an example because, you know, we talk about how people don't know. Well, if I take, for example, the Waihi issue and we cleaning that in partnership with MFE and regional council and so on, but they know it when they can't take the kai anymore, where they get toxic poisoning, where they can't swim and bathe anymore in the waters that they're so used to for many, many hundreds of years. So I hate to think that would happen with our lakes. But, you know, so getting the message across that change is important, and we need to do that now for our future generations is really important. So things are transferable. If you look at the fact that Waihi is not part of this thing, but you look at cousin Rangatihi down the line, what goes down the Tarawera River actually affects them down the line as well, to Kitai. So I think that's really, really important to harbour the views of people who are connected to downstream and upstream, whatever that looks like. But it gets to the point of collective interest and actually getting our people humming off the same sheet. You know, unless we're doing that, it's damn difficult to get. It becomes words on paper, and that's where the words sit. I'm trying to sound a bit like a pragmatist there, but I like to see the words getting into action. I'm not anxious about it, but I do think that we can park on the words and get nothing done. And it comes back to the point you made about sharing information, Peter, and having our researchers come to the party, come to particular forums and be to deliver the information. Our students, for example, to do it. Love to see our people doing this research. But being able to get it out there, not folded into volume. I'm not saying it's going to happen. Like most universities, you give you A+, whatever it is, stick in a corner. No, this needs to be aired. It needs to be aired. That's all I want to say. I'm enjoying the conversations, but you know, that's always the thing. How do we realize the intent and the value of this information, and how does the people come together to realize that, and with our communities as well? Because I cited the Waihi history. What happened is iwi led it and actually got up interest. Farmers, researchers, those sorts, they all came to the party to make it happen. So there are parallel scenarios that are out there that are working. And why are they working? Comes back to fundamental belief that people do believe in a common interest. And it's not because I want my race to go. That could be a common, it's very much a common interest. Don't want your race to explode. But the reality is there's some things you've got to do collectively together to limit the risk, mitigate the risk of, one, your personal interest, but also the fact that longevity for future generations is important. Anyway, mate, sorry for the verbal, but that's what I feel.
Great to find. Kia ora, Te Taru. Councillor Winters.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I have the privilege of sitting on this co-governance forum, but I also sit on the Rangataiki River Forum, which is a similar co-governance forum. And we have 4 co-governance forums across the Rotorua, and they all have their aspirations across the collective. I hear, Sarah, your passion with the Kōra, and the health of the Kōra reflects the health of the lake, which affects the health of the people. And I listened to the Rangataiki River Forum, and the 8 iwi that are up in the catchment of the Rangitaiki River, they rely on the eels to give them the health of the river, the health of the people, and the health of the water. So very similar, exciting data comparison of the Tonga species. So in saying that, we have a budget for an independent secretariat to help co-governance forums going forward. And I know the River Forum utilised that funding. I know Te Maru of Kaituna used the independent secretariat. And I'm just wondering, why isn't this group utilising that independent secretariat services? And I know Soweto is leading the charge here in terms of the administration of that. But with Sarah's presentation today and the, it's not really a disconnect, but I'll use the word disconnect between your work and regional council. I'm wondering if that independent secretariat can utilise in this forum to collectivise the data collection across our lakes. And I put it out there, Mr. Chairman, because it's available for this co-governance forum. And I think we need to utilise it some way, shape or form. And I'm happy to allow the ops team to see where to from here, but I'm putting it on the table. It's available. We should be utilising it through this strategy group. And it's available for the other one, Tarawera, the Ngāti Rangatihi co-governance forum as well. We should be utilising it.
Awesome. Thank you very much for mentioning that, Councillor Winters. So we'll leave that with the ops team.
Yeah.
So if we can follow that up and work out how we might be able to leverage it to support some of the things we're talking about here. Okay. Any final questions, comments on this presentation? Carl? Okay. Can I have a mover and a seconder that we receive the presentation?
Yeah, happy to move it.
Okay, I'll take Nikki as the mover and Councillor Winters as seconder. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you again, Rotorua. Could really hear the passion. Thank you for the mahi that you do out there on our lakes. Kia ora. Goodbye. Okay, we're moving on to item 8.4. And this is a report from Rotorua Lakes Council regarding Lake Tarawera potentially being added into the funding deed. Andrew, do you want to speak to this at all? Stavros?
Morning. And I think for this shared said that says explanatory and we create a presentation about ability control based program. No doubt there will be ongoing discussion about the candidates. But as you are aware, Lake Arawa is a focus for this study point in time because we are in effect with the regulation scheme and of the ultimate objective there is to contribute to the collective impact of improvement quality. Now, there are many facets to it, and one of them obviously is the funding allowed for Arawa may not be part of the scheme funding. Arawa received funding for the fresh water funds historically from the municipal environment. That is obviously going to be a institution and allocation of funds when the project is finished. And our elected members consider that and requested that this letter be considered by the standing jury. In addition, when we are putting to the ground and an big funding arrangement, the lake will be used as one of the 5 private lakes to be recognized funding allocation is being allocated. So I believe that that's not much you can say about it. It's a decision that will be made by elected members. It's table, even for you today, as officers we're fully aware of the limitations of the currently funding. But obviously, that's embarking now on new strategy and some consideration.
I'll just add a very brief comment, and might be that Councillor Brown may perhaps will have some comments at that point. But just want to be clear that the direction from council was to work with this group towards that objective. And we may not have got the terminology right, because we may not, as an individual motion, have captured the exact pathway towards achieving that outcome, but we're looking to work with this group to get to an outcome whereby not just Arawa, but including Arawa is included in that deed, and I know there have been other conversations around this, making those changes. So it is in line with some of these other discussions. And then ultimately to approach the Crown of legislative. So I'll leave it at that, but looking forward to the order on this discussion. Maybe that others wish to add.
Sure. We'll go to Mayor Tapsell or Councillor Brown if either of you would like to have a comment. Go to Councillor Brown.
Peter. First of all, apologies for me not being there. I'm a little unwell. I hope to make it. I'm on the final end of a flu sort of thing, so I didn't want to infect my colleagues with something that's a bit nasty. Look, I think this has been put forward by one of the councillors who I see it as a bit of a knee-jerk given the sewage situation in Tarawera. I certainly support it, but I just wonder whether we might be tripping over a wider conversation about pulling all the lakes into as priority or deed. So really looking forward to hearing feedback on this rather than sort of us trying to put something forward that may not be palatable or fit the timetable, but that's my thought on it.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Mayor Tapsell, just check in whether you wanted to say anything. Oh, well, Councillor Winters.
Yeah, can I move the recommendations, Mr. Chairman? And I'm happy with 1 and 2. And first bullet point, recognition that Lake Tarawera is a priority lake. I think we've already done that through our minutes, and it was a few years ago. The second one, bullet point, okay, happy with that. The third bullet point, I'd just like it to read, request additional monies from the government to the deed mechanism for a subsidised contribution of the Lake Tarawera sewage project, full stop. Delete the 2.5 lines under that. And the reason why I say delete them is because this organisation doesn't have any money. It relies on the partners to do the business in terms of the priorities, the building the infrastructure, doing the wetlands, doing, what we do. And you can't have this group, the strategy group, saying to each of the partners, this is the way you're going to spend your money. And because especially with, I can say that for regional council, we cannot, this group does not have the authority to speak and spend regional council's money. That's on behalf of the 14 councillors. Yes, we can put forward a really good proposal, but I think that's the way we're going to have to go to support this, Mr. Chairman. Mindful that we have a letter from, what's his name? Andrew Hocker, the Associate Minister of the Environment, saying there is no more money from the Crown at the moment for the Rotorua Lakes program. Full stop, end of story. Very clear. But in the future, there may be. If we can get our work together and that we've spent the original deed funding and it's all committed. The announcement that was made by Helen Clark at Otama Marae in 2008, March 2008, I remember it well. She spoke about the 4 deed funded lakes. Whilst we've spent a fair portion of the Crown money and we've spent a fair portion of Lakes Council's money through sewage schemes, and we've spent a fortune through our mechanisms as well, that 72 million is pretty well, what's the word, committed. Committed. So to receive additional monies from the Crown, yep, happy to have the conversation with them. I was part of the original team that went to the Crown along with my good friend Anaru Rangapuia, who was the chair of Te Arawa Māori Trust Board at the time, and we convinced the Crown to put in some money for us. So it's committed. We haven't spent it yet, but if we're going to go down to Wellington and request more money, I think happy to receive that recommendation coming forward from District Council, Lakes Council, sorry, Andrew, Lakes Council. So happy to move that, and we're already a priority lake. So that's where I see this going into the future, Mr. Chair. So I'm happy to move that. Thank you, Mirinda, with the deletion of that last 3 lines. And it ends at full stop after project. Yeah.
Chair Leader.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I understand the sentiment here, but I think we really need to understand the consequences of adopting this resolution. Sitting behind each of these resolutions is, at the core of them, is the Te Arawa Settlement Act in 2006.
Yeah.
And on each of these issues, I would feel more comfortable if Te Arawa had the primacy, in other words, gave direction to us relative to all the other issues they're trying to deal with. The Settlement Act in 2006 gave them some certain amount of booty. We have discussed at previous forums the opportunity for Te Arawa to go back and renegotiate with the Crown in terms of enhancing future pūtea going forward.
Yes.
I think if that is achievable, firstly, we probably need to support it. If it is achievable, the primacy of how that should be devolved, spent, in my view, sits with Te Arawa. So if I look at the first resolution then in terms of recognition of the priority lake, well, that's fine, we can do that, but what is the consequence of doing that? Because the funding, if that's agreed, in terms of water intervention, comes from the Regional Council, and it comes from Rotorua Lakes Council in that recognition. In terms of the deed, I wasn't here, my colleague Mr. Winters was, but the deed was 2008, and that's a long time ago. And I just noticed Wes put up there that essentially the deed funding that was allocated by the then Helen Clark administration government has essentially been spent, apart from the monies that sit essentially in the reserve for the nitrogen buyback in Lake Rotorua, of which $10 million has since been allocated by way of loan to Rotorua Lakes Council. If we want to collectively go to the Crown and seek more money, I think we've got to be very clear about what we want for.
Yeah.
Because you have two things up there. You want money for a priority lake, and you want an amended deed. I think we have got two shows of renegotiating a deed that was settled in 2008, which essentially has been spent. The last bullet point there is that, and it's a bit confused because when I read one in our papers here, they want the deed extended to capture the Lake Tarawera sewerage project. The government had put in 6.5 million through the Freshwater Improvement Fund to that. Rotorua Lakes Council have done two things. Firstly, they've increased the subsidy from the ratepayer. The regional councils put money in there. So I think we've got to be careful about what we ask for and where it's applied. That's why, if this was adopted, I would be really comfortable if Te Arawa had primacy, understood the consequences of this, because we can't go to the bevy bowl all the time without having a clear objective in terms of where we're going to apply it. Where is the best place to apply it?
Thank you, Chair Leader. Look, I know, Kevin, you've suggested the resolution, but I've heard a few different things. So I don't want to move to the resolution just now. I want to hear a bit more conversation. part of what I've heard firstly from Councillor Brown is this is potentially a bit of a knee-jerk reaction because there's funding required for the surge scheme that's going on right now. I've also heard from Chair Leader that how do I need to play a key role, and part of that kōrero was also understanding what are the other issues, what are the potential other lakes that we want to capture. I've also heard the sensitivities of how we politically negotiate this with central government. I'll stop there. I just want to hear from particularly top members, and then I'll look at how we can wrap up this kōrero.
Thank you. I think, I like that to say catchment. First of all, I think we're talking about, you know, I don't think our presentation we just had in conversation we can talk about tauranga and isolation. So in the context of this particular issue, may have applied, but I don't want us to be talking about individual lakes moving forward when we know that there are lake system moving. Fair enough, in a particular context, we might, but I don't want to see deeds referencing individual lakes. The idea that any additional funding that we would go to the Crown for, I have to support and agree with the sentiment that that would be led by Arawa, the Arawa Lakes Trust, possibly with support from some of our area and bringing our part. So it would be our leadership that is thinking about how that money is being spent in the context of our lake. I think that we would need to agree to that as a set of priorities, and I'm not sure that our Hapu members support this ongoing development of these sewage schemes at the top of their list, given the conversation the presentation we just had from the team. So, yeah, I don't think this is ready to go today. I think we need to have more discussions about what these bullet points actually mean for this group moving forward, how we get that money and how we then deploy it across our next program. We haven't decided what our next program is. And I would like to see the money come to us to be the holder of those funds and then to deploy it. There are similar models. So some of the settlements post us, they received a pool of funding and then they distribute it across the community. The manager for the program is actually community and they distribute based project. It's not held by one of the parties. So just thinking about the different possibilities of what that might look like for us. But I think the current model we run really is not necessarily, yeah, we've got this kind of program running in silos.
Only John, that suggested that was running the plan. And again, it also agreed, Nikki Taylor, that Sharon should lead it, and that we should have more say of how it's distributed from the especially how we distribute it, how much and where to.
Okay, any other comments at all, members?
I don't know if it is right.
No, Peter Boy, you can speak.
But then I can get that, you know, look, it's been an interesting kōrero, and thank you, Dad. Your comments are probably timely, but you know, you are right. How do you reflect on the intention of the 2006 lake settlement and what are the intended across 14 lakes and the distribution of the 144 million, what it was designed to do? I guess, you know, the question that we have to get right, you know, what's the number one thing that we have to get right? And what's the most complicated and important part of this whole settlement process? From what I've listened to in terms of the discussion today, there's been that strong operational focus, which our team from Tarawera did a magnificent job, telling us that on the ground floor, the operational aspect, the sustainability, the operational aspect is good, but whether the sustainability is there in the long term is going to be the difficulty
for a team that's passionate about what they do and the expertise that they carry. So from our perspective, you're right, where should that money be positioned? And I think if Gallagher Lakes Trust had the overview of the 14 lakes, to manage those 14 lakes in partnership, then how can we do that more effective going forward? And I think that's the conversation, whether we're talking about an amendment to the deed, following on from 2006, going back to the Crown, and talking about the issue that we're still dealing with. Because one of the biggest issues for me is what happens when this whole Crown funding suddenly expires. What's the position of the Crown in terms of their obligation to then continue to fund the management of our lakes, and how does that affect or impact on our 2016? So I think there's a much more higher strategic discussion that needs to be had by going back to the table as a collective with the Lakes Council, Clayton Regional Council, and Gallagher Lakes Trust together to have this conversation, because I think we can deal with the fire drill of the day and go running out through fire, and then not dealing with the long-term issues which go well beyond us. So I think there has to be a little bit of a pause and reflect, a little bit of a reset of how we're going to manage this process, because we just can't deal with the operational function of the day-to-day issue. That overarching strategic vision and focus. Todd has tried to do the best from my observation in the short term that I've had. We have gone to the Crown with many of the challenges that we're facing. I'll put that on the table now. And that Todd has tried to be the best coach out in the 14 lakes today, but it's happened at a cost to the company, to Top in itself, and the benefit of all of our beneficiaries of those lakes. So we can go to Tarawera to have a conversation and say, this is our priority. We can go to Rotorua and say, this is our priority. We can go to Rotorua and Rotorua and so on and so forth. But, you know, it's not about prioritising one over the other. There will come a position where, as many of you know, that the Crown will take a whole different position on looking at the future stability or the future viability of our lakes. And that well may mean that the resource inside of our lakes might benefit where the Crown is going to in the future. For example, maybe geothermal and the future of geothermal and renewable energy in this country. So what impact does that have on Gallagher Lakes Trust as the owners of the lake bed? And how do we play a far more strategic position inside of that, and working with everyone within our Rotorua district to become a viable sort of organisation that can work with the Crown to get the benefits for all of us in this district. So, to your point, David, I think it is time for a reset for Gallagher Lakes Trust back into the policy where it should have been in the first place, and be part of that distribution network. So that anyone, and look, Gallagher Lakes Trust, I'm not saying we're doing this defensive, we're doing it because our role as coaching was part of that 2006 settlement. So we have an obligation, whether we fulfill that obligation to the letter of the law, is up for debate. And of course, again, as I say, in my short time, my observation is much to do in terms of the current challenges that we face. I think it's really about another reset and another conversation over and above this, not detracting from what our young people are doing in terms of the money on the ground floor. Doing a brilliant job. They can talk about that. We were brought up on the western side of the lake eating courage until we were blind on the side of the lake, cooking on the side of the lake. So we know what that is like. We know what that looks like. And so the data is important. But there'll come a time when the data, we have to support that by getting our strategic functionality right first. So thanks, Chair.
Councillor Brown, Eugene.
Kia ora, Chief. Chair, I just note that Patrick's put up some commentary in the messaging system. I just want to highlight that, but I'm sorry, I can't see who the previous speaker was there, but I agree really where that was coming from. Seems a very appropriate approach.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor White. Is your hand up, Te Taru?
Sorry, those comments to the side.
Yes,
From Patrick.
from Wes, yeah.
Wes?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
So he's just outlining the process that we need to go through.
Thank you for that, Wes.
Yes, very useful. Oh, Te Taru.
Yeah, sorry, Peter. Hey, look, the last comments that Wallace made, I think really merits attention. And that's Te Arawa should lead this and go with strength. And strength means gets back to the initial point that I was making at the start, when it was mentioned, collective impact. Being able to take strong allies with us as well. It should be Te Arawa led, but actually having allies come in beside opens up the conversation a lot more. In my experience, and I take experience of Waihi and Patrick will be very aware of this, is iwi led, then open it up to critical parts of the community so that it can come as a collective and go with the impact of a common interest. And I really state that again, common interest, and be united behind that. So thanks, Wallace. I think if that's sort of thing you meant, that Te Arawa could go alone, but it's far more effective if we take the lead, but have a united bunch behind us. Kia ora.
Just to those, also see for me that the key is the gave certain opportunities for Te Arawa to be involved, particularly the settlement to participate in the future of our lakes. One partner, certain against that, we had huge opportunities. We have greater influence in back of the deed. So going back is important, but also just to recognise, I suppose, and figure out, okay, after that deed, what has been the contribution of the economic, what has been important from there. There have been certain tasks that have been done right and trustworthy, best interest of our lakes, but may not necessarily have been funded from a pre that was set aside to do exactly their job. And therefore, if that's the case, then we definitely need to do a reset, not only about what's there, but moving into the future about what's ahead of us. I just want to add was really important from my perspective. I'm pretty sure this where we currently.
Okay, so based on the nature of the kōrero that I'm hearing, I want to put a suggestion to the floor that we direct staff to go away, or particularly Soweto as the champion of the group, and to bring back a paper on how we approach a review of the deed, or sorry, Nick, read that. Because I think there's two things. There's a reset of the deed, we can work out the wording. Because I think there's two parts to it. There's the what's left and any potential tweaks we want to make with that, or not. Plus, but then I'm more concerned about the future, the out years. We're going to be out of cash at a fairly near point.
I think it's put it, that we recognise we're talking about two different things. We're talking about primacy of the Te Arawa settlement deed.
Yep.
We're talking about the deed. They're two different things.
Yep. Oh, on the back of that kōrero, and Doug, so I'm trying to frame a resolution. So have you got any suggestions? Because I think that's an important point. I think there's a role here for Te Arawa to kind of work out based on the settlement and what we want to be negotiating. Then there's a joint thing around the deed. And that makes sense?
So could I suggest that we receive the report?
Yep.
And ask staff to go away and come back with a clear understanding of the relationship between the settlement 2006 and the deed funding arrangements that were put in place in 2008 and 2008. And the status of the deed funding. Because my understanding is the lion's share has gone on. Apart from the 20, how much?
Incentives.
14 million debt or intervention or.
Okay. Are you able to put out any? Yes, there was.
Yes, all the members here, obviously, we do need to go back to our elected members, who for the resolution. And would be fair to say that it's, the strategy group, is not ready to, not ready to consider that part of these resolutions, the last 3 lines and that subject to review, of the matter that I'm sure here, that's, line. Two things. One, the resolutions in the standard at the moment cannot be given effect under the current framework. And two, that the strategy group will be instructing officers to review all the relationships that are heading into the deed and the primacy of the next task. I think it's important for us office to go back to our elected minds and say, those are the things cannot be considered combined of this activity.
Yep. Appreciate that. I'm just trying to think in terms of how we relay that. I don't think that needs to be recorded in our resolution here, but it's more communication from the strategy group back to RLC. Or would you prefer, are you asking for something in the resolutions that is explicit response to RLC?
No, thank you, Chair. The question is, I wish to go back to the original resolution passed by my council unanimously, which directed me to do something through this group. So I just need to be really clear of what this group's decision is, which obviously I'm not a decision maker, but I'd just like some clarity on what your decision is in relation to the wording that's been put in front of you, because that then frees me up to go and report back to us. So as long as there's clarity, that's fine.
I'll attempt to answer that, and people might need to chip in if I've got it wrong. I think that for clarity, we're saying we can't accept these resolutions as they stand. You've heard the corridor that we want to step back and take more of a strategic approach and look at the issue. So is that, I think that's kind of it in a nutshell. There's a few other little bits and pieces, but is that enough in terms of, and to be clear, this isn't about saying, don't come to us with these requests. I think it's fine for partners to bring these requests, but it's our group as a collective to look at it in the big picture of the whole program.
No, I appreciate that. With
Okay.
This strategy group is important for me to know.
Cool. But that said, we agree with the sentiment around the Lake Tarawera catchment being a priority. Yes. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's the point of clarification. Councillor Winters, Councillor White and myself had quarterly informal meetings with our RLC councillors in the agreement. We've got one this afternoon, and I would say the first item on the agenda will be Lake Tarawera, and we will be grilled on this particular subject. So we need some sort of clarification from you as the chair today as to what we can say and what we need to shut up about. So can you just give us a bit of direction regards to the resolution?
I'm not used to directing my elders, so
That's it. But I think it's, we need some direction as to, we will be asked.
yeah. Well, I think what you've heard today is that we won't accept it as it stands because we need to step back and look at the wider picture. I think that in a nutshell is enough.
I think just also to mention, as I mentioned at the beginning, we actually go through a process, post that independent review, and recommendation 6 is looking at that data funding and future funding in general. So it's not that it's off the table, that is part of what we're doing, but this is just coming a bit too early in the step down for us.
Yeah.
We're just trying to adopt the vision and strategy today, so, yeah.
Thank you, Sweta. Okay.
Yeah, I just did want to say, in the context of the existing deed, which I think is, the piece of the page before us talked about in 2018, we made in this forum, that it would be a priority, so yes, one. The second one, I think we would agree that in addition, Lake Tarawera would receive future investment through a strategy and a deed. We could just amend it to say catchments. This is the third one. The third one where we would decide today that future Crown funding would be allocated to the subsidy of this project. That's the one that there's a top executive, can't give you my support for specifically. The other two, that's my understanding of the discussion today. is we can deal with what's in front of us now with existing deed, but what happens next, we need that broader strategy conversation, so, yeah.
So in terms of the
That helps.
cool, in
Yeah.
terms of the resolution, then we happy to accept point A or 2A and 2B? And just leave out C, or does that still complicate things?
Sorry, Chair, I can't.
You don't agree?
Accept that suggestion.
Sure.
Because the words I used was to receive the report.
Yep.
It wasn't to receive the recommendations.
Yes.
I think whilst is right on the money in terms of receiving the report, but this discussion about where future funding should be applied, because this is really focused at the D, needs to rest primarily with Te Arawa in terms of advice back to this group.
Goodbye.
I think we've, in previous forum, we had agreed that Lake Tarawera should be a priority.
Yes,
Lake agreed that.
Yes.
But what does that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, what does it mean? Does it mean that it gets defunding, or does it mean that Te Arawa, in terms of the original settlement, is able to negotiate more with the Crown? And I noticed there's stuff we stuck up there, the procedure around getting increased deed funding will be totally separate to the ability for Te Arawa to negotiate an extension or variation to their treaty settlement.
Mm.
So I would accept the report and just say this should be part of a much greater strategic discussion that we need to have.
Well, I'm going to suggest that we roll with the resolutions that are up there. So 1 and 3, as outlined, providing they've got a mover and a seconder.
Just one, and well, the read 3 becomes 2.
Yes,
That's it.
correct. Yeah,
Yeah, so we delete all the blue stuff.
all the blue stuff's out. Yeah.
Yep, happy with that. I'll move that.
Okay, got a mover. Councillor Winters, seconded by Nikki. Okay, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Fine. Thank you, Stavros. Andrew.
Good. Yeah, I seem to know.
Okay. Moving on to item 8.5, essential freshwater program status. So we've got a verbal update from Jim.
Hello everyone, I'm the freshwater policy team and council. This is a very brief update, multiple times over the years. And allegedly, well, previously we've got a people that listed draft at the end of last year that has been postponed until such time as we receive the amended national policy statement for freshwater management. It is due so within the next 2 to 3 months. We are in a very changeable space at the moment, but in the form and sort of 17 plus national policy direction is being changed. We're putting it all today this week from a little ago, and I'm happy to catch up with them later to see how we can merge the opportunities that we have with the extra time that's been given. And then I just wanted to note, we also have a couple of new documents published on our website that I will get to share with in minutes. We have published a groundwater quantity document. It's not so much finished with your pretty water rich. And one on underdeveloped small again.
Okay, any questions on the update? Oh, okay, thank you very much, Jimmy. So can I have a mover that we receive the verbal update? Essential freshwater program. Councillor Winters moved, seconded by Nikki. Those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Okay, 8.6 Te Arawa Lakes Trust update. Switch hats. Chief?
So wait, I'll just stay. I think it's better for the online.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay.
So, in the past, I used to read these almost verbatim. But I will take the report in red and just highlight, a couple of things that's been happening in the last quarter. Particularly also, you know, and it's not new to us in terms of reporting against those outcomes, Waiora, Wairua and Waiata, but you will see it across our program of work when we do report back. So, you know, keen to get that reporting across the entire lake program as well. So particularly in the research and innovation space, we've just secured another contract, which is the Lake House, and that's working with Dennis and the University of Waikato. And feeding into Rotorua lakes modelling, supporting some of our whānau to do the actual monitoring themselves around the lakes, and then activating their iwi and hapu to use those tools and communicate the data. A couple other the research contracts, Fish Futures and Tuitunga Pānga Wai Māori, supporting as Nicole had mentioned before, with master scholarships to be doing mahi, particularly in the taonga species space and climate change. These are very important issues that came up through our workshops in terms of broadening those outcomes around, you know, mahi makai, the impacts that climate change will have. So it's really great to be working with research institutes and bringing in the voice of our iwi and hapu to deliver on these projects and support decision making. I think it's also good to and important to mention, yes, we did go through a you know, bit of a restructure last year, and we did have staff losses, but you know, largely our tile team is intact. You know, we're still pumping out the catfish killers contracts. We've got the Te Tukohu Ngāwha Mātauranga Science Fair coming up in July. And we've been talking with Andy and Helen and Dennis about holding a science speaker series for the community and our iwi and hapu. Boat ramifications are still going ahead. In terms of the Goldie Plan threat, we're still working in with MPI and also NIWA to set up a kahui collective with the other iwi partners that are facing those claims right now, and how we're going to co-develop surveillance methods. So we do have some contracts in the pipeline in terms of doing the eDNA surveillance, and we're working on them on some other surveillance methods. In terms of the aquatic weed management space, that's still going ahead. There was a meeting very recently to keep progressing the business case in terms of bringing in extra funding to actually support that program properly. The weed harvesting program is being transitioned to TOLT through a 24-month training period. So that's working with our maritime skippers that we've built up over the while. We've still got our wetland team going hard. So, you know, yeah, I think it's just important to mention, like, despite, you know, different changes in government and restructures, that the team is actually pulled through and still doing the mahi out on the lakes. And, you know, it really shines through in terms of the presentation that the team just done before. Yeah. Yeah, but that's, well, yeah. Any questions?
Any part-time comments at all? Yep, Councillor Brown.
Through you, Chair. Soweto, last year, I think it was, there was a proposal to put together a plan for exotic weed eradication in the lakes. I just wonder whether that got any traction at all.
Is that the business plan we were hoping to take to Treasury? Yeah. So there was just recently a meeting. Maybe William I wasn't at the meeting, but William was. But I understand there was a cost analysis in terms of what does a comprehensive program look like, and we're talking about, you know, not just a spray program, but we're talking about research. We're talking about pathway management, you know, so you've been hitting all these other stones as well, you know, in terms of identifying curricula or anything like that. So a comprehensive program, you know, different variations in terms of the cost analysis. And I think the last meeting that was had, they went through, you know, what is the benefit in terms of the costs, you know, for the lakes, you know, in terms of the value, you know, if we didn't properly fund this. But I believe we're hoping to come and present this as a final business case before it goes to Treasury this year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question? Nikki.
I did notice in the minutes of the last meeting that there was a presentation and there was a request that I think that the lake team engaged with the and that had progressed.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, I'm still sending out angry emails all the time. No, we are meeting regularly, and we are, they're responding, and, there's various steering groups and working groups, and all sorts. It can be a bit difficult because it's, different entities leading different spaces and you're just trying to be like, our lakes. But yes, we are engaged, and, there is some funding in the pipeline and we're bringing to the table to say you need to be, you might be developing a national surveillance program or national management plan, but these are our lakes, so you're going to do it with us when it comes to our lakes. So an example of that is, some of the methods we've landed on from the recommendations from NEVA is EDNA surveillance, and we know how that works, but they've veered away from divers at this point and they've gone towards dredging. And so that's, that's a big consideration for our lake beds. So yeah. It's having those conversations, that those decisions aren't just made without us having our say.
You just really emphasise to, I'm not sure who was here, but Crown, that those lake beds are the property of Te Arawa. And that any discussion about what happens on our lake bed will be with us. Will be with us later from our property.
So I just had the thought that it's kind of like. It's kind of like I'm not allowed to mow my front lawn. Someone else the manager's there.
Yeah, so, we could discuss, I don't know, can this group please support the Lakes Trust in terms of its position as the lake feeder? That would be really helpful.
I think it's fair to say.
But, one of my angry email late last night, and immediate response back is we won't be doing anything without your support and potentially you doing the actual market. So,
thank you.
but it is a continuous, just checking in. Yeah.
Okay, any final questions or comments on this report? Otherwise, can I ask for a mover and a seconder that we receive the report? What? Cheerleader?
Councillor Brown.
Oh, sorry, and Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Brown. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Okay, 8.2, Rotorua Lakes Council update report. Stavros. Who's yours?
Thank you, Chair. In the interest of time, I'm happy to the report and pay the rates and respond to the questions that we have, and only the items included in the report. Thank you.
Okay. You're going to move? Okay, I've got a couple of questions, so I'll come back to the resolution shortly. I just really, this is more so from a Rotiti community perspective, but the comments in here around those who haven't connected and you're looking through the options and how whether they must connect or not. I just want clarity. Do people legally have to connect to the system?
Yeah.
What if they can put in an OSEC compliant system, or is that not even an option?
The development there is not answering.
Wanted to clarify it. But I'll go to you, Mickey.
Yeah, it's the same forest approach. I was just wondering about the work from the flooding. We think it's under the MOU between the Seattle Lake Council and CNI. And just reading that. I don't think we've been out from yet. But I do like the last two sentences. Choosing the region for kind of will be considered. Yeah. So that's that.
As you would recall, a covenant was arrived between the Rotorua Lakes Council and CNI and the constituent iwi within CNI. That at the time when the regional plan was upgraded, which is probably next year, 2026, sometime, and the target nitrogen and phosphorus levels and pathogens treatment will be achieved at the box of the treatment plant was no longer a need for irrigation to the forest, and there was no need to communicating the 414 hectares of land in the forest. Because all the target reduction on nutrients and pathogens will happen on the plant. The covenant agrees that council can use about 10% of the land to find a point of discharge in the forest, subject to an agreement by the two leading National Covenant and Urani that will inherit the CNI lands. We have not reached an agreement about the specific location at this point in time. The treatment plan progressing will be finished within the next 18 months, and therefore we, together with really SGB, looking together to have a wide and group with, say what are the other options are.
Thank you.
Your leader.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add to Stavros's comment in terms of connecting to a reticulated sewage scheme. Currently, the regional council will not give you a consent with the current existing offset systems. However, if someone was to provide evidence that there was no leachate, in other words, I'm referring to someone came forward and said, here's a totally closed system that I can pump out every 6 months or whatever, that might be a different scenario. Right. The other thing we need to consider is if there is a main trunk reticulation going past your gate, the ability for the local authority that service, even though you don't connect to it, is still live.
Oh, wow.
So there's an incentive there that people can consider what the options in terms of having a consent, as opposed to saying, well, I have to pay for this opportunity and not pick it up. What do I do?
Yeah, cheerleader is absolutely right. They said what we call a service availability, right? You can pay for it, don't use it or not. And that's going to be very good PLA.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this report? If not, I'll talk.
Sorry,
Oh, yes.
it was any change or are you going to have it?
Just give a regular update. I'll see it as part of the British.
Okay, cool.
And the other ones currently on it with discuss options.
If there's no further questions or comments, call for a mover and seconder to receive this report. Thank you. Move, Councillor Winters, seconded. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. 8.3, point mine update report. Thank you, Stavros.
Yeah. I think I coached for Scott, you said it properly, I'm the team leader for the Rotorua land management team, with Moana and Helen. Helen is called today. She was coming down with a little today and she was trying to fight off the I received it. They think storing that on my committee. And we're gonna do our best to present. Yeah, I don't think I've seen that.
All good stuff.
So, yeah, to receive the report, the recommendation, and not.
That's not the report.
Yeah.
That's in your agenda pack, reports and stakeholder and the attached.
I think it's, amazing.
You can help us out. It's supposed to be uploaded.
Yeah, I think.
This is working in partnership.
Yeah. I'm just challenging, yeah. No. I think just going to back to the recommendations that come, one of the things was to elevate the status and role in the strategy group. And at the same time, we're sort of coming to end in terms of funding and being able to participate. So, part of that review of the deed allowed have myself and, support our participation in this. And there's some deliverables in terms of that contract that we have. One of them is around the reporting and planning. And I think, once we've adopted the strategy and we've started to, figure out really what the Lakes program looks like, that, this planning will change. The planning that's been put forward to you today is through Helen, and we acknowledge that that is for now, but for the next 6 monthly, it will be myself working with the partners. Yeah, so it's just adopting that.
So I might just clarify with members, if members have read the report, maybe we just focus on asking questions. It might make life a little bit easier on our presenters who are given the last minute hospitable pass. Are you comfortable with that, members, just asking questions, or do you want to go through the presentation?
I've read it.
Yeah, unless there's any key stuff you want to highlight, sorry.
I put,
Chris?
I note on page 54, there's a section on OCO wall. And at the bottom it says an update on the decisions of the regional councils and respecting the wall will be given today, a strategy group push. So
Yes.
I just thought I could take the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, to
Thank you.
sort of slide on that. I prefer to leave this slide. So I was at the council meeting. Chairman, so elect members may want to chip in, but the comments I wanted to make was that the resolution at the council meeting was to delay the decisions on the strategy for the wall to August. And the reason for that delay is that we elected members felt we needed to have further engagement both with the technical working group and also independent. Before we will report back in August. And congratulations, by the way, on adopting the new vision strategy, refresh vision strategy, because I think that's incredibly helpful for this. Consulting around the which of course is located in one of the Yellow Lakes. So it seems obvious to me sitting in the background there that we need to have involvement of this group in that engagement that needs to come up between now and August, the how long needs to take. And yeah, I think that we need to have a conversation around the way after the community engagement and involvement in the context of the overall wall of the Wairua or the ecological well-being facilities or lakes. So I'm learning a lot about by reading the new way of doing things. Also want to acknowledge the work you've done, so it's fantastic the way that this group is directly evolving. So I used to sit in the surveyors thing and they changed a couple of years. Yeah, but so in terms of our walk, we'd like to engage this group and seek good guidance and direction on how we make sure that that decision is made in a proper way.
If we can come to you shortly. Just so on the Oho channel, I agree with the decision you've made around connecting with the community technical group in Tangata Whenua in that process and then see where you land after that. So I just wanted to support the decision that was made by council.
I was gonna get rid of that hand and we get to that point, so awesome. Just sorry, just a technical question about the decision being made in August. That's 4 months, so I'm just thinking about time. Is that enough time to have the engagement that you're looking for? Have the conversation started, so you feel like you're going to have the right conversation for weeks? That's just my question.
I think it's a very good question and we don't know yet.
Okay.
I think it was acknowledged that we were perhaps trying to rush things a little too far.
Yeah.
Got that last.
Yeah.
Either August is long enough.
we'll find out when we get there.
Okay, and would you come back and then really that time frame and go and do what you needed doing, or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's up to the council.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, but just I think.
that's been my advice to them.
Yeah. Thank you for not making a decision when you did. Thank you for thinking about it. I would be, but I'm not sure all this is.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, it is.
Thank you.
Pressure's on.
Yeah, yeah. Thank
Just
you.
another comment from me in terms of the Oho wall issue. I just want to, there's a generic comment that, you know, all of the things that we're doing, we need to be able to look at them at different points in time and say, are they still required? So it's one of the things I like about what the regional council are doing is stepping back and saying, okay, what was the objective of putting it there? Is it still required, or what kind of shape does it need to look in? Because sometimes we get stuck in this, we've built a wall, we've got to maintain the wall forever, and maybe it's irrelevant now. I don't know. So just wanted to make that point. Well, I do have another technical question going back to the incentive scheme. It's related to the ETS stuff, which I wasn't aware of, that the ETS is now limited. So I just wanted to understand it properly. Is the ETS limiting the ability to convert farmland to forest? And yes, okay, that's what. Okay. And so have staff done the analysis of what does it mean in the Rotorua catchment?
We haven't touched the analysis. I mean, because we do acknowledge that it's to be impeded because that has really driven a lot of those.
Yeah, because that's the other lever a lot of the landowners are utilising to. Yeah. Okay.
Just on the ETS stuff, two things on Te Maru Kaitana as well. So we had a presentation at the last week on kind of it was around fresh water, but it was just around the economic, Māori land economic analysis. It was really interesting, and I just wonder, there's kind of a similar meanings around the ETS for this catchment. So what are the issues or barriers to us achieving a goal in city strategy? And again, it's probably a difficult thing, but what do we need to know, or what knowledge do we need as a governance group to kind of try and shift some of the policy in the city that might kind of get there? So the ETS, I was just thinking government have looking at considering wetlands as part of the scheme, and given we are building wetlands, and we have significant number of wetlands around our 13 satellite lakes, that might be something we think about strategically leaning into the government side of it. I don't know, even if we have a role in that, I'm not sure if it's probably technical, but it'd just be good if someone could get an update on that ETS work that the Crown is doing.
On the land use change, we've already written to Minister Macleay. Yes. Raising this issue relative to the most important issues that this group's dealing with. In terms of nitrogen and phosphorus in Lake Rotorua. So it's not a blanket. There will be always opportunities to negotiate relative to these circumstances.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments on this item in the report?
Oh, sorry, just given the conversation we've been having about having or that are a priority, I just want to acknowledge the work that's been done in the catchment of the climate, my home and wait and think of the news changes happening there and the planting, and just, you know, even though the deed funders and those lakes down lines and turn to them, and all of the agencies are trying to do their work in those places. And I just think we want our future be to reflect, does that actually be able to work in all of the lakes and should be catched? So, well, we did it happening.
See, just off the back of that comment, I think one of the challenges as a government in this group is that each organisation is doing so much work, and we hear from each of you kind of separately. I think one of the challenges for Soweto as we move forward is how do we bring all that information together? One, so at a governance level, we can see the full picture and exactly what's happening. But I also think it'll be very valuable in terms of political lobbying and whatnot, but so that government understand there's all this other work that's outside of the deed that is making a change, and there's stuff that's outside of strictly the Lakes program that contributes to this. So over time, we need to work out how do we get a comprehensive view and all of that data together.
And just the other thing, I think the program is really good at demonstrating to us that the work is getting done. piece by piece.
Mm.
But I'm keen to see is how we categorize it.
Yeah, how's it driving?
Achieving the outcome.
Cool.
So each program, what's its contribution to the outcome and how are we measuring that over time? I think it's the key part of the strategic space a little bit more, rather than yes, we did that job. Its impact and contribution was this, and it might just help us prioritize moving forward. Given the current sort of fiscally constrained space. Do that.
Bye-bye. Okay, call for a mover and a seconder. Oh, yes.
One other thing too, I think it's important that this group hear about the way Bay of Plenty Regional Council is going to be funding its share of the Rotorua Lakes program into the future. So for next financial year, starting July, we will still be collecting about $10 million a year from ratepayers for the Rotorua Lakes program. In the past, it's been funded 50% from a targeted rate for Rotorua residents, and that's about $160 per annum targeted rate for an urban size section for the Rotorua Lakes program work. Over the next 3 years, that will drop to that $160 will cease to zero. And we will be collecting the $10 million per annum in the general rate right across the Bay of Plenty.
Oh, right.
So we believe that's a fairer way of funding our lakes program work, because everybody in the Bay benefits. They all come to play here in their boats and their toys and the lights. And so we're making that change, Mr. Chairman, to our rating structure that this group needs to be aware of. We're still going to be doing the mahi. We're just collecting the money in a different way, starting next financial year.
Thank you for that update. Yeah. Before I move to resolutions, I'll just check in again with our presenters. Is there anything else you wanted to highlight from these reports?
No, it was covered on Tonga, and it's covered quite a lot. We should discuss it. So, yeah, do we need to go through these elections? Yeah, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Good. We'll just move to resolutions, eh?
Oh,
Are you comfortable with that?
yes,
I'm relieving you of that hospital pass, Scott. So good. Goodbye. Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder that we receive the report and also to adopt the 6 monthly report? Okay. Nikki moved, seconder. Councillor Winters, all those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Okay, our final item.
Sorry, just a question. Scott has a presentation as well that you.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Scott.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off, have I?
There's a little bit. So I mean, it's sort of talking about the reports that you received from us, and maybe we can have a look at it and make sure that it's still the same. Part of that conversation as we go on this, and make sure we're do we want to do Helen final report?
Helen is fine.
yeah.
Adopted it. That's
Yeah, that's fine, but.
Well, so I was going to talk about a new way of reporting on our data from our landowners, that both from incentives and our from the goals as well. So yeah, I just want to provide a bit of clarity about nitrogen data collection and reported. You know, we've got models that we use to help us understand nitrogen losses in the catchment. We've got targets at the lake, and we've got the models that sort of that landowners need to. So that's data through to us, so that we know that we have verification on the laws. So we've developed a nitrogen dashboard that I'd like to introduce to you here. So yes, we've got two models really. We've got the overseer model, which we use to model farm systems, and it gives us real confidence that those farmers are adherent to the rules and meeting their obligations at the root zone. And then we've got the rotating model that was used to determine the total reduction required. So that's at rate. Overseer measures at the root zone. So we've got matching closest between the root zone and the lake. That means that about 40% of that nitrogen is lost through nitrification at denitrification at wetland sites, deep rooted trees, things like that. So, and we want to be, as an organisation, we want to be transparent. We really need that data to be shared to keep all of those landowners engaged and meeting their targets. So we've got quite a bit of science review reports that requires regional councils to report on progress. 5 yearly science reviews help us understand the science and make sure that all of the models that we use in the store. So the Lake Rotorua nitrogen dashboard that we've developed allows us to report in a consistent way and also up to date. So we're not just relying on that 5 year of science review. We've had specific feedback from our farm community that they want the data shared. They want to know where they sit.
Is it a competition?
They want to know that they're on target, and they're concerned about the 2032 target. They know the incentives targets, and they've heard from Chairman Leader and Ellen that they need to find some way, and it's really the obligation of the farming community to make that at 240 tonnes. 140 from rules and from. So yeah, so we use overseer data to monitor them, and it's important that we capture that geospatially, and we can keep track of how farmers are going on the average lot of the farmer, and that enables us to develop the dashboard. So this is the landing page, the catchment overview. You can see that the start number is 868 homes, and that's sort of all of the allocation at the root zone. And they've got to drop down to 505 tonnes. So that's including the incentives targets, but it's at the root zone, not the lake. So we're trying to get a dashboard that makes sense to those people who are submitting data, basically. So the horseshoe on the right, you can see, is the area of land in the catchment that is in rural land under PC10. So there's still about 1,500 hectares off. We know what's going on all those farms, so they're working towards it, but they haven't quite got to that point where they apply for consent or they're still working through those options. And you can see the target here for incentives is 5. That's for 38% or 38 tonne. So the second part of the dashboard is really sort of drilled down, and this isn't online, this is just a snapshot of what it looks like. You can drill down into that map and expand it out. You can see all of the different parcels of land, what rural category they come under, and then you can see the other graphs. You've got area on the left, and the green is what's authorised, and the blue is what has been monitored. So you can see, that the middle, the middle one, the nitrogen loss. You can see the green is authorised at 497 minutes. They're actually leaching at a lot lower level, right? So what a lot of farmers actually do is they'll provide an EEP, they'll model their farm system and they'll put it right at the top of the allocation or what they're allowed. But a lot of the farms are actually farming well below their allocation. Some are actually farming below the 2032 targets. So that figure there, 654, you can see that's well below the 22-27. It's almost at the 27-32 target. But the issue is we haven't got those 1,500 hectares what actually here. And we go back again, the what's being monitored. So what the actual data is different from farms. So we have 561 tonne. So that puts them below the 27 and almost to the 22 target. But again, you don't have that 1,500 hectares. So when we have those 1,500 hectares, I should be able to give you an update in 6 months. I will be closer to authorised at about 700 and 2027 target already for what people are actually looking. So yeah, so making progress. The incentives target is still a big issue, but yeah, I've been really pleased with the level of compliance of the farm community.
Sorry, just to clarify that slide, this is looking at from the rules side, eh?
This is rules.
Doesn't include the incentives numbers.
Rules and
okay.
Yeah.
So the question that kind of raised when you said that they're almost at the 2032 target,
what?
It just made me think, well, then do we need to continue the incentive scheme? Can you just clarify what I'm hearing?
Right. So we've still got 1,500 hectares of agriculture within the rules.
Yep.
So it looks like from this, you know, they are quite close to the but we don't have anyone.
Okay, so it might change once you have that data.
Yeah. And at this point in time, we will share the actual data within this. You know, that's what farmers want. They want to know where they're at, how they're progressing with data. But we're not quite ready to share that yet.
Okay.
I have a question about do farmers, because of the student burning out and stuff. And do farmers have the tools they need to make the shifts for us to get to that goal?
I think the 2032 target is going to be a little challenge. There's a lot of farmers in this catchment that are using plantain, which is really good at reducing nitrogen loss, and that's been across the dairy farming community. They've really embraced it, and that's making a big difference. They're able to actually farm, you know, at higher levels than they otherwise would. But the guys have got that mitigation tool are able to. There's a lot of science behind it.
Yeah, that is comments by the day.
So maybe,
It must be more.
yeah, so that maybe, you know, they're probably farming, you know, at a higher intensity. But then they could, if they don't have that. And what's the, you know, 7 years.
Thanks, mate.
So that gives me confidence. And the farming community are engaged. So they are engaged and they've sort of embraced the understanding model because it allows them to, you know, change their farm system, know one part of doing so. And, yes, over the fund basically, make those decisions.
Mr. Chairman, in summary, I think what Scott's saying is that compared to probably 5 or 6 years ago, we are much more confident that the farming community knows what their job is and they're doing it. And we've got this communication tool now that otherwise watching Scott's feelings works well with the farming community, I think, and it's getting really good at that. So what we're saying is we've still got an essentials work to do because that is slow. But in terms of the rules, the 140 tonnes, it's actually going quite well so far, but
And I think the other thing, Mr. Chairman, is there's new technologies coming forward all the time through the dairy industry, dairy and seed that farmers are taking up, and it's really cool to see. They know they have a responsibility in this category, and they're on board in terms of doing everything they can. Do they have the tools? No, because technology is changing all the time, but they're embracing the new technologies as they come in. So I think we've got to commend our farming community in this catchment, Rotorua catchment, for embracing the changes that are required going forward. And it's a credit to them. And our lakes will benefit.
Yeah, I'd really like some comments to go out. Really for that. And to actually saying, celebrate the rural community and that get it out and sort of wider for our city folk as well. They realise the money that's going in.
Got a quick question just around the data. So I noted in the report that there's 76 properties that are operating under resource consents, then there's 239 as a permitted activity. Do you get the data for the permitted activity, Pete?
Some of them, so low intensity farms are required to submit data. The other ones are sort of under, the lifestyle lots, so they're under the stock and rate. So we'll be monitoring the.
Okay.
Yeah, we will be monitoring as well. And we've got a methodology that's relevant.
Okay. Have you completed the presentation? Yes. Are there any final questions or comments from members?
There's a tool that
Yep.
we can track it or re-register. We can track it.
By Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I just wonder, some of that stuff's hard to read on the laptop. I wonder if we could have that emailed out to us, please.
Yep, not a problem. Miranda's going to organise that for members. Okay, I'll call for a mover and seconder that we receive the turn on a bit. Well, we've already got it. Sorry, we've already got the mover and a seconder, in which case I'll put it that we receive and adopt the report. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Okay, home straight whānau, MFE update, and then we've got a little bit of GB and we'll be done. So I am going to pass the raka over to Wes.
Great, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Wes Patrick. I'm the manager for the environmental investments team, standing in for Lorena today. I did send through some general updates to Miranda just before the meeting started. So you should be able to get a copy of those here soon. The notes I have are quite generic, and I didn't want to really waste your all's time going through them all because they're the general updates that you probably already know better than me, not being in a policy team, about the resource management reforms, biodiversity credits, and things like that. But the things that I was really wanting to focus in are the things that are kind of in my realm, which is related to the Jobs for Nature program, and then also the upcoming kind of secondary restructure we're having at the ministry to give you some context setting and things like that. And then I was going to end with a quick update about the Rotorua reticulation scheme cost variance report that we're still almost there with getting you all out that final report. But basically just some context setting for the ministry is, at least in the investment space, is we're coming up close on the Jobs for Nature closeout. So basically all the agencies are supposed to be ending their Jobs for Nature program on 30 June. but several agencies, including the ministry, has several projects that have been, I guess, end out in June 2026. So it's not a total closure for Jaws for Nature program projects, but I'd say the vast majority, basically 80% or so of the projects are scheduled to end on 30 June. And so our investment teams are quite busy trying to help those projects transition out and get ready for processing all their final payments. The other thing is about the ministry. So you all are fully aware that we went through downsizing back in November. The ministry has done that downsizing in 2 phases. We did the majority of redundancy packages and stuff back in November, but we also have some delayed redundancy roles within our teams. So there were 60 staff in the ministry or so that are on delayed redundancy that end 30 June. So it's roughly about kind of 8% of our staff will be finishing up in June. And then we'll be kind of resetting and we'll have more of our standard teams going from there. So a lot of up and down, pointy end stuff happening within that space. So just so you know, when we get really busy in June, that's why. And then the other update I had was, you all recall Minister Hogard had requested that cost variance review of the Rotorua reticulation scheme back when we were first looking at the variation of the report. We had gotten a draft report in sometime kind of late November, early December, and had shared that early draft with Stravos and Helen to get some initial feedback because we want to make sure we're on track. We also need to get some additional information from RLC and Bay of Plenty on some of the data we couldn't put our hands on to help with the reviewer. So we did get our final report back from them about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And we're in the final stages of getting that signed out in terms of happy with the report and the quality of it. And I expect to be sending that through to you all probably in 2 to 3 weeks. I just need to get the Minister Hogard across the line on what it was recommending. And then we can kind of go from there. But I think you probably, I don't think there's major things in there that will surprise you. But the key thing is that we do have it in the deed of funding as an activity for the strategy group to have a discussion about. So, depending on how you all like to do that, I'd be happy to pull together a paper for maybe your next strategy group meeting. And maybe we can do it as a group there if you like. But I think that's basically it for me. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Wes. Members, any questions? No? There being none, I'll call for a mover and a seconder that we receive the verbal update from MFE. Noki and Chair Leader seconded. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you very much, Wes.
So can I just make a request, because we didn't receive any report until last minute, that Lorena comes to the next strategy group meeting and presents and or provides a strategic report across all government policies that may affect this group.
I like the thinking. Can we leave that at an operational level for you to follow up with MFE and get the detail? Goodbye. Okay. We're on to general business. So we had 2 items. John, I'll go to you first.
My name's John Gifford. I'm the chair of the Lake with Politics, and we're just taking the opportunity this morning to give you a bit of an update on some of the highlights from our AGM meeting on the 22nd of March. Our AGM is always a very important occasion for us, because it gives us the opportunity just to sort of benchmark how we're going in the context of what the community expectations are for the lakes, and making it quality and overall health of the lakes. More importantly, it gives us the opportunity to reset our strategy for the next year. And I thought it was just worthwhile to highlight some of the things that are core to our agenda. It's actually been very interesting sitting in today's courtyard because there's a lot of things that I think that the society can contribute very constructively and proactively towards. One of the big issues that we've got on our agenda is definitely the state of the lakes. If you look at those reports that this group generates in terms of reporting TRI, biodiversity, general health of the animal of the lakes, a lot of those indicators are indicating ongoing deterioration. And I guess the key question for us is how do we stop that? How do we cure that? And so, you know, we're continually focusing on things like, you know, the strategies that are needed to reduce nutrients, strategies to continue to increase biosecurity, biodiversity in the lakes, how we can continue to enrich and make sure that people get the full amenity value out of the lakes. So that's a really important ongoing perspective. But one thing that I would like to highlight is that process is very much driven by the whole Rotorua community. Everybody in Rotorua has a fundamental stake in the lakes and the health of those lakes. And in the context of the strategy group, I think it's really important to keep asking themselves how well are you actually engaging with the whole Rotorua community, every aspect of it, right through from you know, all the different ethnic groups, all the different categories and community engagement and associations that are involved in the lakes. I mean, we get involved in this group because we're fundamentally incredibly interested and we've been so interested in the lake for the last 60 years and advocating for their health. But, you know, we're just another group that represents a whole broader community, and I would ask that this group really takes that on board. And if you reflect back on our submissions, we've continually advocated that perhaps there is actually scope for a broadening of the representation around this table. I understand that it's actually, you know, formed the consequence of the settlement agreement, but there is an opportunity strategically to think about how you can get greater input from the broader regional community. I'd like to touch on another initiative, and it sort of relates quite closely to some of the things that Scott was just talking about, and that's our initiative around what we call Arawa, which is the development of a rural catchment group to take a more proactive role, initially focused on Lake Rotorua and what can be done by the rural community to enhance water quality and environmental outcomes for that lake, but to use that as a model which could be applied for that matter to all the catchments for all the lakes across Rotorua. The Wairarapa initiative is very much, particularly in the context of Lake Rotorua, the farmers are really concerned that they don't want to be seen further fighting over the rules that influence the way in which they can use the land. And as a consequence of that, they want to get proactive and implement a range of strategies or actions which can actually drive real outcomes short term in terms of the long-term water quality of Lake Rotorua. And I mean, just to touch on a couple of points that Scott made, it's really important to realise that, you know, a lot of the numbers that we look at the level of the land use are at the root zone and not necessarily at what's happening at the lake.
Sure.
And of course, we've got two big factors contributing to that. One is the legacy load of nutrients coming down and increasingly in the groundwater. And then the other one is the role of surface over land flow and the impact of sediment and nutrients coming from storm events, and in particular, we get increased storm events through climate change. So that Wairarapa group, I think, can contribute significantly to the outcomes of this group, and it would be good to see them actually actively involved in setting some of the strategy that this group gets involved with. One thing that I can't go past, and that is, I noticed Chris's update on the Arawa Channel Wall, and the Arawa Channel Wall is definitely an issue which is of deep interest to the lakes and the society. We're of the view that there needs to be actually very urgent actions to stop the leakage of Arawa Channel water going through into Lake Rotorua. And just in case out in people's minds as to what the urgency of that issue is, I'd just like to read one little paragraph from the 7-year review of the Arawa Channel Wall, and it says, The TLI in Lake Rotorua is still above its target. There is also no clear evidence that the water quality in the lake is still improving. However, there is some evidence that the total feed concentrations are going through a period of increase. This suggests, together with the conclusion drawn from the water quality modelling work, that the continued placement of the wall is still warranted. So that came from the science review related to the 7-year review of the Ohachi wall. So quite clearly, the science is saying that there's a need for the wall, and we support that wholeheartedly. And we want to see urgent action taken in regards to the issues that stop it to believe it's still removed. So just to finish up, yeah, I mean, the Lakeswater Quality Society, for those of you who aren't aware, would be in existence for 60 years, advocating for the lakes. Really appreciate the corridor around what's happening with Lake Tarawera. We would endorse and fully support those sorts of thoughts and concepts that are being developed there. We just would like to be part of that process. We endorse the whole idea about sharing data. We think there's much greater need to share data, and it's good to see things like Crops Dashboard becoming more available to a broader group of people. That helps people make decisions. But it is important that the community has an opportunity to be more involved, be seen to be involved, and probably be more participative in the decision-making process. And just to finish off, I noticed there was quite a lot of discussion about the funding and the deed. Don't underestimate the effort and the input from the Lakeswater Quality Society in securing 72 million in government money that came in and was part of that deed funding. We were pivotal in getting and securing that money from the Helen Clark government back in 2006. Thank you.
Kia ora, John. And just want to acknowledge the work of the Lakeswater Quality Society, as you've mentioned, been around for a long time, have been a key part of all the work that's going on. The other thing I want to mention is that as we refresh the strategy, our members are really clear that we need to have ways of allowing various community groups to connect into the program. So point taken from what you've raised today. Any final comments or questions?
Around representation at this table, so I think the youth council and the of council are here to represent the community at large. I think operationally there might be some more work we need to do to ensure that engagement is occurring right level, those conversations are happening. I've just had a quick reread of the strategy job where you're talking and kind of underline some key places where it is very inclusive, so we'll be driven by that strategy towards inclusivity. And if I just think about Tartobi and what he used to say around, things like sitting with our lakes and being able to contribute, I think we're all open to that in terms of sitting at this table. I'm really comfortable with the representation that sits here now as per this ceremony.
Okay, thank you, John. Appreciate it. Councillor Winters, you had a...
Oh, yes. I've been asked to put this on the table today, Mr. Chair. It's a bit of an operational matter, but I'm sure that staff would be interested in hearing about it. I've been asked to talk to this group about the Rotorua lakefront accessibility at the moment. We know we've been through a lakefront development plan, and it looks marvellous down there. We've got boardwalks, we've got and the like. We know that the Lakeland Queen is coming back. We know that there's an area at the lakefront set aside for Wakaama, where the old sound show used to be. Wakaama is on a bit of a comeback, I've been asked by them to present this today. They are concerned, and I'm concerned as well, about the state of the accessibility into the lake down by the lakefront. It is pudded. It is really bad, Mr. Chairman, and if you expect your moko or your children to stand in that waters, in the mud, to get into a wakaama, a canoe, a yacht, whatever, it just doesn't cut the mustard, Mr. Chairman. So what I'm asking for today is a bit of an MOU, and yes, I know Nikki Arawa owns the lake bed. know that. Is there any way, shape or form that we can get an MOU going with ourselves as Regional Council, Lakes Council and Te Arawa Lakes Trust, just to have a bit of a tidy up and get some of that mud off the bottom of the lake? Because it comes in waves, and yes, there's going to be a storm this weekend, and we know there's lakeweed down there tomorrow and the next day that needs to be taken out of the lake. It's taken out of the lake by us, Regional Council, disposed of by, it's taken out by us, Regional Council, and it's disposed of by Lakes Council, but it sits there for too long. There's piles of paru down there now that need to be shifted. If we want our kids, if we want development down there to access the lakes, and you've got it in your strategy, cultural redress, we see Wakaama as a huge part of cultural redress. We have to have some sort of MOU that as and when required, and it might only be every 3 months, it might be 6 months, I don't know, I'm not a person. I know what's down there, but there needs to be a way, shape or form to remove some of that paru that's down there. I know the rowing club is affected, Coast Guard's affected because we can't even get our boat in there at low tide. There's rocks down there, but there's got to be some general agreement down there that can assist with the access to the lake for recreation. And I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chairman. Okay. Hopefully staff can come back with an MOU that the three organisations here today can work together to get a resolution, because it isn't acceptable in its current form.
Okay, cool. Thank you for bringing the issue to our attention. I want to suggest we leave that to staff to look into it and to come back and suggest, because I don't even understand the issue completely. So I want to have a bit of information about what the issue is around the sedimentation, what the options are, and we can go from there.
Yeah, in order for us to come back and consider that, can I just understand your perspective on paru? Because,
it's the mud.
It's the mud, the
mud. So we're not talking about the lake weed.
No,
it's probably part of the picture too.
It's part of it, because we know after this weekend, there's going to be a lot of lakeweed down there, and it needs to be removed ASAP. And it is a council reserve property.
Nikki,
there is a long-term unresolved issue, I think, about the lakeweed sedimentation that this would contribute to. I think there's also a longer term strategic conversation about the way the protection is managed. So I do, while I agree that we want to make sure that people can access the lake and those things, that cannot be in the absence of a commitment to a long-term plan for sedimentation on Lake Rotorua to be addressed. I think it was an issue at the time of the settlement, it's continued to be an issue. Our iwi and Haku were raising it with us that place about the impacts of that sediment, the impact of water, the impact of higher lake levels, the fact that the sediment's not moving. So yes, happy for the staff to do that work, but it also needs to be in the context of that long-term sedimentation issue on the lake bed and also
and I think that the expectation is that staff look at it from that perspective, from the wider next program.
Happy to support that.
Okay, kapau. Those were our 2 GB items. So we're at the end of the meeting. I'll offer a karakia, and then we have lunch available for us in the wharekaipula on this. So kia hihiri tata. Unuhia, tūrā ki te uru tapu nui a tānu. Unuhia kia māma kia wāte nei tauira. E rongo kia whakairi ake ngā kōrero o tēnei huihuinga ki runga. Whāno, tū mai te toki, haumie, hui e, ki e. Kia ora tāna.